Didn't see one. Should we talk Southern so you'll think you're in Austin?
I did wear boots.
I'm getting to be afraid. Your horse tied up outside. Austin's probably pretty urban, right?
They're very urban, but there are some urban ones. There's also some very rural ones.
And it's Texas. Whatever you do it.
There are those also that say that it's the southern state.
Interesting. Well, I know they have good pools and lots of, those are the kind of things I know.
That's a big change. I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
Who designed all these streets and roads?
You're right.
And somebody, and all over town, not just.
All right, probably. Are we expecting the police?
No. No? No, we're not expecting them.
Oh,
They're
okay.
sick.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Aleda, can you take roll?
Commissioner John Mickey,
Present.
Commissioner Peggy McQuaid,
Here?
Commissioner Chair Ken McCroskey,
Here.
Commissioner Reeves, she's on a trip, she might be arriving late, and Commissioner Javandel is excused. He has another meeting at his work. I should have paid.
All right. We have minutes from the October 24th meeting, but there were only two of us there.
Well, then I'll move approval.
I'll second that. But can we vote on it? There are only two of us.
Aleda, can we vote?
Do we need a quorum to vote on the minutes?
Yeah, but you,
So perhaps we should put that aside in the hopes that Susan will show up?
right, yeah, it's fine.
And
Okay.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. So it's basically for December then, hopefully?
Yeah, say, we can put them off till December.
Yeah.
But if Susan shows up later in the meeting, we could pick it up again?
We can pick it up again, yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
right.
let's do
Mhm.
that.
Okay.
So this takes us to public comment. This is the time in our meeting when members of the audience and public can comment on things that are not otherwise on the agenda. We will have a public comment period during each of our agenda items this evening. So I ask you to hold your comments on any particular agenda item until that time. Is there anybody who has something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move right along. We're told that the police won't be showing up this evening, so we're going to move right to item number 6, discussion and possible action on matters relating to the following. And we're going to start with the letter A, And I've been asked to change the order slightly because we have a staff member here especially for items number A, F, and G. So
I would like to see if we can actually, Mr. Francis Chapman is going to attend the meeting, but I don't see him right now. So why don't we start with the items E, if you don't mind, and G, and then we can actually pick up.
E and G or F and G?
I mean, F and G, I'm sorry.
F and G.
F and G,
Okay, let's do that.
Good evening, Commissioner. This is Public Works Director Ray Chan. This is a continual report on the progress of the Sidewalk Program. After last time, the Commissioner gave us the instruction to do further studies about the Sidewalk Program and how we can assist the fiscally challenged family. And we have been continue to discuss internal in Public Works, and also we have been discussing with our neighboring cities. To start with, that is for item F. Yes.
I think you're looking at the minutes and not
I'm
the
sorry,
agenda.
you're right, thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I can read it off of here.
Yes. Last time we discussed about the technology using horizontal cutting. And after we survey and talk to our neighboring cities like Emeryville, actually Emeryville, they have been using 90% of their way of removing the tripping hazard by horizontal cutting. So this seems like a pretty proven way of removing tripping hazard. And the good thing about horizontal cutting is it substantially reduces the money that invests into reducing the tripping hazard. Typically, when we replace a flight of concrete, the cost is somewhere between $200 to $2,500, fronting a typical resident. But using horizontal cutting, the cost is somewhere between $100 or in most cases, probably less than $100. So this really helps to reduce the cost. Although this method, it does not really address the problem. It kind of buying time so that eventually the sidewalk will hum up again if it is due to the tree root. But at least it will buy us time. It will buy us like 3 to 5 years time, and hopefully we will have enough time to address further problems. But this is really a good method based on our research. However, this is only the method of repair. This is not really a mechanism for financing. In financing, we look at 3 different ways to deal with the financing of the program. Number one is to continue our cost-sharing program, which the city has been doing. However, earlier this year, the funding was exhausted, so we have to stop the program. So what staff has been trying to do is we are looking into if we have any grant fund out there that we can tap into to help to kind of regenerate this program, then it will bring benefit to the city. The second way of doing it is to put a lien on a property. And then through the tax lien, the property owner will pay it back, through their property taxes. And then the third way of doing it is through a citywide assessment. The citywide assessment program actually is a pretty good program. However, it's going to take longer time because we need a certain percentage of vote. We need to put it on a ballot. So it's going to take longer time. So what staff is going to do is we'll try to finish this study as soon as possible, and then we'll bring it back to the T&S Commission one more time, and then we will take it to City Council for approval. Hopefully, what we can do is we can push with the first 2 programs, which is cost sharing and property lien first, and then in the meantime, we will work with the finance director and see if we can get the citywide assessment. So everything will go concurrently. I'll be happy to answer any question that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have 2 questions. On option 2, putting a lien on the property, is there interest in that over time?
I don't remember seeing the word interest in there, but it's once they put in a property, it's like you owe the county tax, so they will just keep coming to you. Exactly, how that works, I'm not quite sure. It's more like a finance question, but this is one method that we can go after.
And my other question is, if it goes to a vote, is it a 2/3 vote because it's a tax?
You mean, are you talking about the citywide assessment?
Yes.
Yes. The citywide assessment, because it's a tax, so we do need to go through the whole process. Like based on Prop 218, we need to make an announcement, and then we need to get people's input, and after that we need to vote on it.
But does it take a 2/3 vote? Because you're saying we'd have to have a ballot measure. Is it a 2/3? I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know exactly if
Okay.
it's 2/3 or 50+1. So that will be in the future. I will come back and address the T&S Commission.
Okay.
Thank you.
At this point, we'd like to open up to the public if you have comments or questions on this item.
Hi, I'm Harry Chomsky for Albany Strollers and Rollers, and I appreciate the options that you've brought to the table, and I especially appreciate that you're working on it both from a short-term, kind of get it fixed so that people can walk around perspective, and a more long-term try to change the system so that this is handled in a way that's fair, because as you know, we do strongly believe that sidewalks are part of the public right-of-way, just like streets, and we hope that in the long run they can be funded in the same way streets are. So thank you for doing all of that in parallel. Appreciate it.
I don't see any other comments or questions. Great. Bring it back to the commission for opinions, comments.
Sounds good.
Right. I want to thank you for bringing that to us and keeping us updated.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on to item letter G, a report on the Buchanan Bikeway construction activities.
The Buchanan Bikeway construction on November 12th, which is last week, is officially completed according to our schedule. Although the contractor still have some minor things that they need to catch up. Some of the things is we are waiting for some of the materials. So it is understandable because some of the materials are special order. But in general, the project, according to the project schedule, is done. This phase, what we are dealing with is we need to close the project. But because the contractor has been filing a lot of claims against the city, against the project, so we have to put a lot of effort in trying to deal with the claims right now. We are hoping by the end of this year, we should be able to settle the claim, or else we'll go to the next stage, which is litigation. So.
Any questions from the commission? No? Any questions or comments from the public on this item? Seeing none. Thank you for that update.
Thank you, sir.
At this point, I think we're going back to letter A. Okay. Washington Avenue traffic calming and on-street parking.
Members, good evening, Commission members, good evening, members of the public. This item, Washington Avenue traffic calming and on-street parking options, has been presented to the Commission since basically a couple of years ago. We have conducted some speed surveys, and we have also implemented temporary measures to see how effective the most permanent features would be. The University of California, through the Transportation Center, provided some pedestrian assessment evaluation on Washington Avenue, and And also, they presented some options that went from street grades, some red curbing, raised crosswalks, bulb outs, and in additional stop signs. We implemented the additional stop signs, took a survey, of speed and volume survey. We found that the speeds were decreased by about 14%. Then we decided to test the bulb outs, which is the barricades, the orange barricades that people hate, and I apologize for those, but the barricades have shown that volume on the street has decreased. And I think it's about 7%, if I remember correctly. So now this commission advised staff to actually look for measures that actually address the issue of the parking on the sidewalk, to open up the sidewalk for pedestrians, because right now pedestrians are actually walking on the street. Mothers with strollers, bicyclists, joggers are actually using the street to actually travel through that segment of Washington Avenue. The assessment study presented some options for red curbing that actually staff kind of like tweaked a little bit, and I would like to see if I can present it here. Those are options, nothing is written in stone. This is open for discussion. We really have to address, with the understanding that we have to address the issue of parking on the sidewalks, not only at this segment of the street, but also at other streets like I think it's this 900 block of Pierce. There's some parking on sidewalks on Gateview, I think Tevlin, but we'll have to start somewhere. So based on the different options from the assessment, and also options that Commissioner Mickey and I actually have worked in the past, I would like to present to you basically one research on available parking that we came up last year, I think it was, or 2 years ago, something like that.
This was by 2 years ago.
So hopefully this is loading. I've been having trouble with the internet.
Mm.
So hope it's loading. Let's see, that is loading. So how can we do this? So we project that. Is this one? Uh-huh.
Do you have a display adapter?
Yeah, we can use the projector. Let's see.
Ray, I think you have to push the button over there
Yeah.
to switch the screen.
To John Clerk.
help us.
You know why it's not, we cannot see the attachments here?
Are the blues the driveways? This isn't good television. Sing us a song.
I'm sorry.
This isn't good television.
This is, look, it's going around and around. And actually, Sue told me that it was very slow today, even loading it. But, well, I'm going to continue with the background. We printed some the copies of these parking availability along Washington Avenue. And this is a survey Commissioner Mickey and I actually worked on about 2 years ago. And, oh, it's right there. Great. Okay. Thank you. So you can see there Washington Avenue, and there is now currently there's parking on the narrow part of Washington between Pierce and Gateview. That segment is about 21 feet wide, and obviously it's only one way there. I mean, if somebody's driving up or east on Washington in that area, it basically you have to really yield to the other person, and it's right now we observe that vehicles are parked on the street mostly in that segment. So from Gateview to Polk, most of the curb is red. And from Polk to Cerrito, it's another stretch that is narrow. It's about 21 feet there, and about 21 also from Polk to Gateview. The red curb options is either basically just one option could be just red curb, the south side throughout. And another option would be to stagger the red curb. Right now in the center segment, most of the curb is red, so there's no parking except for those two vehicles on the south side, very close to Polk. However, if we red curb the southern portion and allow parking on the northern portion, then there is, and maybe we can actually look at the other one that I gave you at your places. I mean sorry, I want to see if you want. Yeah, but we have another one here. So no, the one that is long, this one, the 11 by 17.
The one's right there.
Oh my goodness, maybe we should really turn on the light. I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but.
Turn the light on.
Would it be better here? So this option actually is like a stagger type of configuration for the red curb, and starts with the option of red curbing the let's say the northern curve between Cerrito and Polk. Between Cerrito and Polk, yeah. And the reason is that it has more driveways. In the southern portion, it has less driveways, and there's more capacity for parking there. Then from Polk to Gateview, red curve the southern portion of Washington. Also, the assessment study recommends a raised crosswalk by Catherine's Walk, and in a little bit of about 40 feet should be red curb on the northern portion in order to allow for visibility, because it's a crest and there is horizontal and vertical slope curves there. So in addition, on Washington and Gateview, at that intersection, bulb outs are proposed, and that's why you see those barricades. However, if we only do one side, which is the side of the east side of the intersection, in order to make the intersection more straight and actually reduce the turning radius, I think we achieve more reduction of speeds there, and we may gain some parking spaces there. Of course, there is the driveway there for that house, for the house that is immediately adjacent to it. But I guess we can, maybe a small car or a motorcycle can park there. We have actually marked some parking spaces in Albany as small car and motorcycle, and they're working very well right now. On the segment from Gateview to Pierce, as I said, we can go either way, but this option presents red curbing on the north side. There are more cuts on the north side too, and that's the reason for the red curbing. This configuration presents like a stagger alignment, which will help with speeding, because cars opposite to red curbing only the south side, we can actually make room to a little bit of a speed in there. But in this case, it will be more like a zigzag type of thing, and it's not too short. The segments are long enough that it's not going to be too, safety is not going to be compromised. That's basically an option open for discussion. This is nothing written in stone, as I said before. It's basically presented to the residents, see what they think, see what you guys think, see what the commission thinks about this option. Any suggestions, we're open to that, and we'll respect your opinion. We have to start a conversation somewhere, and this is basically the way to do it. We have also a presentation from Mr. Francis Chapman. He has 2 PowerPoint. Actually, I have to mention that I met with him was it this week? Yeah, early this week on Monday, and we discussed this option. It's this part. Yeah, actually the part from Polk to Gateview, and even we were talking about implementing that segment first, because it's the segment that has the most red curves, and see how it works.
Just to expand on that, so I'm concerned about increased speeding if there's red striking. This is the most critical area with the crest and the curve limiting visibility at the same time. On the sun setting, you have drivers driving straight into the sun on a blind crest at 25 miles an hour, which is crazy. What Aleda proposed was to move the parking from, we currently have 2 spots right here. By moving it to the other side, you bring parking closer to the crest, so there's more constriction, and it adds 3 net spots. We go from 2 to 5. So given other changes that are in the air, I felt like this was a good place to start, by adding spots and bringing.
I would really like you to go to the microphone. Otherwise, I'm not going to remember what you said.
So my main points were that we looked at Gateview to Polk with an eye to how do we calm the speeds further. And we felt like moving the parking to the north side adds more parking and should help calm speeds in the most critical area, especially when you add the raised crosswalk. I think that's the most important component. And I don't know is the presentation something you can put up, Aleda, or will I just read it? Okay.
The one that you sent me?
The one earlier today, yeah.
Okay.
I have a second one if the commission's interested later that just shows the population trends and the increase in children in our area.
By the way, Francis, I'm gonna, through the chair, any comments, any questions before we go into, this is more like a public comment right now, so I guess we jump a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
Oh, and I can wait if you guys want to continue with that
I think
discussion.
we're interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'll interrupt if we,
But I did have a question for you, Francis.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because I'm not quite understanding. Is your proposal different from the one that we have here?
No, Aleda and I met Monday because I did not like the idea of red striping alone. I feel like the traffic needs to be calmed before any other measures are taken. And so we together looked for a traffic calming measure that we could implement without pouring concrete or doing something else that would delay the project because we are 3 years into this project. So this appears to be, with a little bit of paint, a very effective way to add parking and calm traffic, which I think is a great thing. I had never thought of it.
So this proposal that we're looking at is what you're suggesting?
It's just here to here.
right.
Right, but
That's what I want to be clear about.
right, no, I just want to make sure that what I'm looking at is what
And
you're
yes,
saying is.
to move parking to the north side. And I have larger comments as well, but that, I just wanted to speak to that picture first. So if you have the other parts, it should be pretty quick.
It's loading, so we have to change. Oh, wait, no, we have to.
I can just make some stuff up before, just to remind the commission. I think most of you were here at the beginning, although a couple, John wasn't, and I'm not sure Ken. We started this at the workshops for the pedestrian and bicycling improvement process.
Let me know when you want me to advance.
Now it's almost 4 years later, so I'll stop the extemporaneous. Go ahead and advance. So Washington Avenue update. We have seen improvements since the stop signs and crosswalks went in. The speed went down a little bit initially from about 23.5 to 22, but I believe the third speed survey more recently showed it's gone back up. Is that correct? The traffic volumes were trimmed, and I use that word purposefully because 7% of 1,000 cars a day is still way too many cars. The south sidewalk, on the positive side, the south sidewalk is mostly walkable. Everyone has just started parking on the street. It took a little while, but most residents park on the street. And then those folks who park to access the bus over to San Francisco see people parked on the street, and so they follow. So it's been good on the south side. Not so much from Polk to Cerrito, but the north side's a lot wider, and with the crosswalk, you can do a little zag and get through fairly safely. But again, I want to stress the 3 speed surveys show that we still aren't close to the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. A couple other factors, the number of broken mirrors are down a bit. I can see that. But again, I just want to remind the commission how frequent that occurrence is, and that's why people were on the sidewalk. People get tired of paying $250 once a month or whatever it might be. I've had a couple myself. We also had 3 reported accidents last calendar year. One of them was the one that ruptured the gas main. Another one ripped a wheel off a car, and the driver disappeared at night. So I'm implying that driver was drunk. That's why they didn't stick around. On the next slide, when we walked through with the pedestrian assessment engineers, I made a point of asking them what they thought about widening the lane by red striping, and they said that almost always leads to higher speeds. It's just logical. So I think that's an important point. The community, most residents strongly oppose red striping. That's fairly predictable. And so I was talking to Aleda, is there any other option to look at the north sidewalk and treat it differently? Can it be converted from a sidewalk into something else so that we would be legal now with the cars off the south side and cars further up on the north, providing enough room for the fire trucks? And again, emphasizing we need the speed reduced before any changes that increase our risk. Go ahead to the next slide. Those of you who've been in traffic safety for a while know these stats, but I think they're fairly significant. Going from 0% net injury at 20 miles an hour in this particular case, it's a particular site in Portland where these statistics come from, up to 95% net injury or death at 30 miles an hour. That's quite a difference from 20 to 30. If you look at the next slide, this is not site-specific. This is Federal Highway Administration data, and you can see it's an exponential. Oh, if you go ahead to the next curve. This is exponentially increasing curve. So the correlation from speed to injury and death is strong. Speed kills. Going to the next slide, I'm concerned about the application of removing cars from the sidewalk in a few cases, Washington specifically, but also Solano Avenue. We need to, not the removal, I'm sorry, we need to be concerned about wider issues in Albany about speeding. On Solano over the crest, it's also a 15-mile-an-hour limit, and I think they probably have a worse speed problem than we do. The road is 40 feet wide, so it's less of an issue, but it's still flagrant speeding, and you know, either we should raise the speed, which is not appropriate, or deal with the problem. Next picture just shows Solano and Washington together, and the dotted red line is kind of where the crest goes through, and you can see there's two intersections close to the Solano crest where drivers would have a very tough time braking in time if they come over the crest at speed and somebody's crossing in a car. Next slide, we have some other blocks where red striping is going to be a particular issue. Pierce Street from Buchanan to Solano. Aleda said that's one area that the city's going to look at next. That is where the new crosswalk is, one of our only two ways to access the school and the park. And I'm very concerned. It's already a very busy block with a lot of cars going fast. And if you widen the lane there, you're going to have more issues with speeding. Also Jackson, which I don't think has been proposed for red striping at all, but I just want to point out that's another very narrow street where you don't have room for two cars to pass. There's a lot of families on that street, and they do have speeding problems too, just because it's a shortcut. You know, really the bigger problem is this shortcutting between the freeway and San Pablo, or Buchanan and San Pablo. If we go in further, you know, this is not particularly special to West Albany. I think all of Albany has issues with running stop signs and speeding, but just pointing out that there's particular streets that experience it worse than others because they're on that shortcut route, a shortcut route. If we go to the next slide, going a little further, these are sort of the, yeah, that was just a laundry list of other streets that are on the shortcut routes. I think, personally, there's been an increase in congestion on our side streets that take you from Buchanan to San Pablo since Marin Avenue was slimmed to one lane. I've seen it. I'm not sure the city has a baseline. I think I've asked for that before. So we can't really prove it one way or another because we don't know what it was before. But logically, it makes a lot of sense when Buchanan's backed up to Pierce that people are going to look to make a left and keep rolling. I do. And I think, you know, other drivers do the same thing. It's bumper to bumper on Solano in the morning. You can see it pretty much every morning. It backs up to the crest and over. And then you also, have a lot of cutting through. One of the issues that I look ahead to is the Safe Streets program for San Pablo and Buchanan, which I'm very supportive of. But I think the net impact is going to be worse traffic because you can't make the street safe for pedestrians and bikes and have cars going faster. So I think that's going to push more traffic into our neighborhood, and I'd like the city to start thinking about that problem before the changes on the safe streets, because it's taken us 3 years and we still don't have control of the speed on our street. So I'm concerned about those delays. Another critical issue, if we go to the next slide, a lot of drunk drivers cut through our neighborhood at night to avoid the police. It's a pretty documented fact. My own experience, I know of 3 cars totaled in hit and runs, plus 2 houses that have been hit by drunks. And these are just cars that were parked at night. You come out in the morning and it's totaled. There's a lot of other incidents with mirrors and other stuff, as I've mentioned, but these are the most flagrant ones. And again, we had to evacuate at 2 a.m. when the drunk driver hit the gas main down the street. On the picture, you can just see how those distribute, the ones I know about, and it's pretty obvious what's going on there. It's a shortcut to avoid being on the main road and getting pulled over. None of the DUIs were Albany residents, incidentally. It's no one going home or anything. They're just going through the neighborhood. So next slide would be the recommendation I have, which is make it safe for kids to get to school and for everyone to use our neighborhood, walking, biking, as well as driving. Less traffic, lower speeds would be desirable. Let's do something about the DUI shortcutting, make it not a shortcut, and let's be conscious of those neighbors who have issues with mobility, because there's a lot in our area of Albany, and I can show you in the second presentation, if there's time later, some of the statistics on the population trends in our area and across Albany that I think are very relevant. It would also relevant to the picture that Aleda had up on the earlier with the proposal to red stripe. I would love to see some of the houses that don't have garages highlighted in that picture, because there are some on our street that just don't have a garage, and some of the ones that might only have one off-street parking place. And then, take that into account when you're doing the red striping. The second comment on the stretch from Polk to Cerrito is that if you red stripe as proposed on the north side, that's where all the houses are. There's only 3 houses that front on Cerrito on the other side, and I think it's about 10 or 12 on the north side. So it would impact a lot of folks to have to.
The reason is that it's only across the
Oh,
street.
yeah, I totally
but the
understand
reason-
why.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
reason
just-
is that it's more like less driveways on that area.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just saying that that's going to generate more opposition than looking at maybe a chicane strategy or something that would impact people less. So in summary, higher speed is more dangerous. The narrowest streets like Washington on our section, Pierce and Jackson, would need effective traffic calming if any red striping is going to go in, and it needs to happen before because the effect is predictable. I've talked to quite a few neighbors across the wider area, and there's no real consensus on what to do. It's clear, but you can say that everyone would like to see lower speeds and reduced volumes. But how you do that, a lot of different ideas. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners for Francis?
I did have one question, Francis. If you had to choose between lower speeds and lower volumes, is there a direction that either you or the people that you've spoken with, is there a preference? I mean, there's always
I
both,
can only
but-
speak for myself because I
Okay.
haven't really had that question before people, but I would go for speed
Okay.
because, again, the effect of speed and injury and other, I'd rather have more cars going slow than less going fast.
Okay.
Thank you. So if there are no other commission questions, I'll go ahead and, please.
Sorry, can I just throw a few things out there? Just because,
Yeah.
Peggy, I'm not sure if you were on the commission when when Aleda and I originally presented these maps, there were a couple things that we pointed out that maybe not all the members of the public know. The houses along Washington between Pierce and Gateview on the southern side actually have an alleyway that has access to parking. And the other thing to note is that the cars that we show here are estimates on legal number of cars you could park in the space that's provided. Because technically under the Albany law, you're not allowed to block your own driveway. So if you were actually to go out there today, you would see that there are likely, in some locations, more cars parked than shown on this diagram, because they might be blocking their own driveway partially or fully. But do note that technically under Albany law, you're not allowed to block your own driveway. Just a few things that came up, must have been 18 months ago or 2 years ago when we talked about these drawings.
Can I make one quick comment on the alleyway? I think that only goes up about 4 houses.
Correct. For
Okay.
those of you who have a map, it goes up to, I think it's 810 Washington Street. So it's the first 5 buildings. That's it, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So, Aleda, you have nothing further to present?
No.
So we should probably open it up to general public comment at this time.
Yes. And I would like to to invite you to fill out the cards there with your name, and if you want to comment, and pass them to me, and we can call you. Yeah, those are, thank you.
It should really be a general public comment that represents my views more than.
Yeah, but if you, do you have the other presentation, I can load it.
Yeah.
Takes some time. Last one. Yes. I collect them and then.
Why don't you go ahead and call the names?
Okay, Chi Kwan Shi, Xie. Yes.
We're going to have you stand there, and just in the interest of moving things along, I'm going to give everybody about 3 minutes,
Yeah, I get it.
and we'll see how that goes.
Okay, thank you. It's my first time coming here, but I live in 825 Polk Street for the last 13 years. And my big concern is parking. I moved from the Southern California. I'm not really used to parking, such a problem here. And I really experienced it in that last 13 years. And I just want to share my experience. Just today, just a typical day, I'm coming back home from a long day. You know, before I'm driving to my home, my thinking is, I hope I have a parking space. That was in my mind. And it's just explosive, so I'm really concerned about that. I think before I moved here, I didn't have this idea about parking in front of people's house. I mean, I used to just park in people whenever I find a parking space. I understand. But now that I live there, I understand that this is how important it is not to park in front of someone's house, because, you know, most of the houses when I move in, the garage is already converted. I don't have a garage. I have a steep driveway, which I will park there. However, there's so many cars, you know. My neighbors have many cars. This is my neighbors. They already have 4 cars, and then they have several tenants, and then they have cars. What it is that, so if I want to drive into my driveway, there's a truck in front of me across the street. Another car parked right by the edge of my parking. If some cars park in front of us, I'm sorry, I'm a bad driver. I cannot go into my driveway or come out. So I would coming home, someone parking in front of my house, I have to look for parking. So if I don't understand about this parking thing, if you're going to red line out the car, because the one that up north is when friends and family comes, I tell them to park there because it's not in front of anybody's house. But if those parking removed, then I don't know where to ask my friends and family park. And there's a domino effect too, because I only have 1 car. And 1.5, because my husband, my son share 1 car. So sometimes we have 2 cars, sometimes we have 1 car. So we move our cars. Once our cars are gone, whoever can park then, that's it. Other people's car, I can see that the domino effect, because someone parked in someone's house, and someone moved someone's house, and someone ended up in my house. It's just such a headache, and to the point I almost feel like I don't want to live here anymore because it's stupid parking. And we walk a lot. And so I understand how difficult it is to go through that area, because I always have to walk around the car because the car's parked up there. I don't know what the solution is, except I have one suggestion for you to think about. Have you thought about making Washington a one-way street so the people can park out in the street, not on the curb, and it's just 1 car going at one time and not to worry about going both ways? And that is my thought. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Sorry, let me turn that off.
Next is James Simmons.
Yeah,
Hello, just briefly. I like the idea of the moving the 2 spots to the north side and reading the south side, I guess that's right. I like it because it will allow us to test this notion of one side of a street being red and see how it feels. And I think in the short term, there's no harm done. So I just wanted to say I'm in favor of that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Clockable? Carol, I'm sorry, it's Carol.
Well, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the meeting, so maybe this has already been discussed. I'd like to know if there has been any concerted effort to educate the people who live on Washington and the other streets involved to not park on the sidewalk. I hear about it at these meetings, but I don't know that anyone has gone to the neighbors, and I see there are many neighbors who are not here, and I don't know if anyone has talked to them at all about the request and the problem of people parking on the sidewalk. And if you're talking about doing a red striping thing as a trial thing, that might be effective, I don't know. But I'm not generally in favor of that as a permanent solution because I think it will increase the speed of cars on the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Miron, yeah, okay. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 points. The first one is the traffic flow that was on the Albany, the gentleman put up. The first slide, the second bullet, was the traffic flow on Jackson Street from Buchanan up to Washington as being very heavy. People take shortcuts, that was his point. It's Castro Street, 1 block north, that's affected too, up and down. So there's a lot of heavy traffic now. I've lived there, with my 35 years now. Tremendous increase in traffic on Castro also. So that boundary needs to be pushed north to consider whatever you're going to do with traffic. My second point is, if you considered speed bumps, has that been considered? I know they're all over El Cerrito now. So you can put a 15-mile-an-hour couple of speed bumps in along Washington, where it's really necessary, slow people down. Slow them down. And the next, also one more thing was brought up, making one way on Washington. You might have to make one way on Castro too, I don't know, so they can go both ways somehow. But that's something else you might look at.
Thank you.
Deborah Dentherder.
Hi, I live on Polk Street also. Quick comments. I just wanted to respond that no harm done with a temporary redlining, because it seems to me that even a temporary time where people can't park on part of that street is going to be extremely inconvenient for a lot of people. And if there's ever emergency where somebody needs to get to the car, I mean, that makes it just harder for people to live there. And that's not no harm done, that's harm. It's maybe mostly inconvenience, but potentially consequential and certainly no fun. And I also apologize for getting here late, and I have to beg forgiveness. What I don't understand is what exactly are we fixing? I understand that there are places where when cars park on the sidewalk, it blocks the sidewalk, but most of the sidewalk there is quite wide, and there's a normal sidewalk width, even with cars parked, technically on the sidewalk. So I'm just not clear on what problem we're fixing, and I would request to understand that. I apologize if that's already been explained.
Thank you.
Can I respond to you before? There are two problems that we need to fix with parking on the sidewalk. The first one is accessibility. The sidewalk is right now is required to be a minimum 4 feet wide. Newer standards actually are requiring 5 feet wide. We have the issue of Americans with Disabilities Act, and we have observed that when cars are parked on the sidewalk, pedestrians have to go on the street to actually get through the Washington Avenue. We have observed a lot of pedestrians actually going on the street. Accessibility is another issue. People with disabilities should also be on the sidewalk with no obstructions. That's a law, Americans with Disabilities Act law, and that's basically one of the issues that it's actually commanding this change.
Clarification, are you both talking about Washington, or are you talking about Oak only? Just because you said the sidewalks are wide.
It's
So does that mean that there's 4 or 5 feet of sidewalk throughout all of Albany, or you just?
Well, that's the minimum according to regulations. For example, if people leave their garbage bins outside, if people don't cut their vegetation, that width that we have, and some might be even less than that because, the city has been built a long time ago. But I'm talking about the requirements that we have right now and we have to follow, is that 4 feet is the minimum, some instances of 3 feet depending on how, but only, every so often, just to have accessibility.
Does all of Albany except Washington Street have 4 or 5 feet of?
Most Albany have 4 feet. In instances where trees are, there are some times that it could be narrowed to 3 feet, I think, and then, but only on that instance, and then widen again to 4. So I cannot exactly answer the question because I don't have a statistic of the width of every sidewalk, but every sidewalk should be accessible. That's by law that we need to really make sure that every sidewalk is accessible.
Strollers and rollers has that data. We measure every sidewalk.
Right, yeah, yeah.
I tell you there's about 3 in all the
Why are they?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're getting a little off our normal flow here, but Alita, there were 2 other queries about things that I think we've looked at before, and one of them was the suggestion that people just stop parking on the sidewalk. And it's my understanding that if people do that, then there's no room for emergency
There's no room
vehicles
for
or garbage
emergency.
trucks.
And I don't think there's a room for, there's no room for emergency vehicles. It's very difficult. The 800 block right now is parked pretty, on both sides are parking on the sidewalk, and it's basically a one-way street. And a wider truck could not go through it.
Yeah, so to recap some of the numbers that we had thrown out in the past, Washington Street at its best is 24 feet wide from curb face to curb face. So if you were to park a car up against the curb, your car would take up anywhere from 6 to 7 feet minimum of that roadway. So when you take out the 7 feet, which is more typical, you end up with 10 feet clear. And the fire trucks that Albany has really need 12 feet to be able to make it through. They can make it through with 10, but they might do some scratching if you happen to be not parked right up against the curb face. So just pulling the cars off of the sidewalks presents a different issue in that now your fire trucks can't make it through, access-wise. And it's not only fire trucks, it's also garbage trucks that would have a hard time getting through.
The fire department also has, sometimes they have to deploy the ladder, and that ladder actually make the width 14 feet. So they actually require at some point to have 14 feet to access emergencies or respond to emergencies. I do have 2 more public comments if you want to take them before. So it's Alfredo Morales.
A couple of comments. I live in A21, and one of our neighbors were saying about the parking problems. I really believe that people here that we live in that street, we get really bothered by the issue that don't having our cars parked in front of our homes. And that's because we are the only one affected for this traffic situation. If we get like red strips on one side or spots along one side, then many people of us will have to look for places to park, and that, not only to us, but everybody. And I know that this is in trying to relieve the traffic of everybody else, but not everybody else live in that street but us. That's the issue, that we are the most affected for a situation that will relieve a problem in the traffic. I really would like to approve the idea as well of creating a one-way street, because that would not jeopardize the issue of having the 2 spaces at the same time when 2 cars crosses each other. That's the second thing. The last thing that I would like to say is that I'm not saying that we should just change another fire trucks or garbage trucks, but maybe it's a time for thinking another solution that will help. Maybe smaller services trucks to collect garbage. There must be a different vehicle already used in another city or another point of the world that we can just put our eyes on it. And fire trucks, I'm not sure that if that's possible as well, to have smaller vehicles, but because our street, we cannot make it wider. And before I go back to Sid, I understand that the parking on the curb, it's an issue, but it was strange for me as well when I just moved to this part of the Bay Area. But I got used to it pretty quick because everybody else was parking on the side, and I didn't understand on the first months that we were living there until my wife and then me and then another neighbor got hit on the mirror. We just have been losing mirrors every once in a while, and that's because the narrower of the street. Thank you.
Can I address a few issues just because they
Please.
keep coming up? So there were a couple issues that have been brought up. A few times people have talked about one-way streets. Again, the one-way street on its own doesn't necessarily solve any issues in terms of the fire truck access, because the one-way street resolves the issue of 2 cars coming towards each other and having to kind of play a little dance of who's gonna play chicken first, right? Who's gonna pull over to the side and let the other person go by. That resolves that issue, but it doesn't resolve the issue of if you turn into a one-way street and you pull the cars off of the sidewalks, you still have the fire truck issue. The one-way street is still something to consider, as we move forward with red curbing. It is something that can be considered, but the big issue right now is still getting the cars off of the sidewalks. Will require red striping on one side of the street. The other issue that actually I'm really glad you brought up about smaller fire trucks. There are smaller fire trucks out there. Actually, a smaller fire truck, it's called a Milwaukee. And it was because the city of Milwaukee realized that they had very narrow streets, and they worked with a fire truck company to produce a narrower fire truck, something that's not quite as small as the ones they generally use in Europe, but it's much narrower. My understanding is that it has a 9-foot clearance that it needs, and it needs about 10 to 10.5 clear to actually be able to do all the things that the fire truck does. The one thing to note is I believe our fire department recently just purchased a new fire engine, so maybe there's a good resale value then for that truck, but I'm not sure. And then the only other thing I would bring up is, because we've talked about this in the past, is with speed humps. The biggest issue with speed humps is speed humps on slopes present issues. And so we've talked about this a few times in this general part of Albany. I think there was a request for either on Cerrito or Polk, there was a request for some speed humps, and there were some issues with even there, which is much less steep than Washington, with placing those. That's not to say that there aren't other solutions to look at. I've been really excited since Ray got here and Aleda have both been trying things. So the things that the red, the temporary bulb outs that are out there now, which are, we got some emails, they're causing some issues right now because pedestrians can't actually get through them, but the idea there is that if those were to be replaced with true curbs, there are other ways of slowing cars down without necessarily using speed humps. So the two main methods for slowing people down is vertical displacement, and that's what a speed hump does or speed table does, and then there's horizontal displacement. And horizontal displacement is things like the speed bumps that Aleda's talked about, and the things that Aleda's talking about, switching the red striping from one side of the street to the other, that forces a car to swerve a little bit to move around. So those are the two methods. And we've talked about these in the past. I don't know that we've necessarily looked much further than the work that Ray and Aleda have been able to do recently on Washington.
I want to clarify. The study, the assessment actually suggested as the ultimate solution to actually convert the Washington Avenue into one way with partial barriers. I just want to, that's an option, as Commissioner Mickey says, but we have to actually conduct a study because traffic will be displaced to other streets, and we have to evaluate that impact. It also triggers environmental CEQA review, which is the environmental review by the state of California. So we have to really do that, and one of the major impact would be the traffic displacement to other streets, to neighboring streets. The other thing I want to say is that the raised crosswalk, maybe because of the scale was too small, actually, you couldn't see the raised crosswalk by Catherine's Walk. That actually works as a speed hump. It's raised about 3.25 inch, so it's basically a hump with a flat top. That actually will reduce speeds. And that's something that if we test if we do the red curve between Polk and Gateview, we will have to implement that raised crosswalk to allow for pedestrians to cross to access Catherine's Walk. I understand you have another comment. Through the chair, is it okay if Deborah Dentherder add a comment? Deborah?
Let's have you come up for a brief comment.
One thing I want to just say that I certainly support accessibility for disabled people, and I guess I just hope that we don't start on Washington Street. I understand something might have to happen, but the sidewalk is already narrowed because of telephone poles and other obstacles that are, I'm thinking, unlikely to be moved. And so why do we not have cars there when there's no accessibility there anyway? Also wanted to say I'm sorry if our parking habits have ever impacted anyone. And I can't read my other comment, wait. And I also agree with a one-way street and a smaller fire truck.
Also, Harry Chomsky, I'm sorry, I apologize that I didn't call you before.
Hi. So Albany Strollers and Rollers had an impression from past visits of what the accessibility of the sidewalks in the area was. And we were advised by Francis Chapman that the parking habits in the neighborhood have actually changed recently. And I appreciate his making the effort to tell us that. And Preston Jordan went on a site visit a few days ago and did observe that there was a change in the way people are parking there, and we're not sure what brought that about. People are still parking off the street, but there is more sidewalk width available, at least from this experience, than there had been in the past. So Preston's report was that one person could successfully walk along the sidewalk on one side of the street, which is an improvement from the way it was before. And so thank you to the residents in the neighborhood who've changed their habits to try to improve this a little bit. It's not really a permanent solution. We need the minimum 3 foot, or preferably 4, and it would be better to have it on both sides. But at least the urgency of trying to do something about the sidewalk flow has been eased a bit, and we support taking the time to figure out the speed problems and the parking problems at the same time as trying to work out the remaining sidewalk issues. The other thing I wanted to point out or ask about is the idea that reducing the parking would necessarily increase speeds on the street. It seems to me that the speed on the street would be determined mostly by the width of available driving space. And if right now we have cars parked on both sides but partly off the street to create a certain amount of width for driving, that will lead to certain speed behavior. If we change the parking by removing it on one side and moving the cars on the other side out into the legal street parking spaces, in theory at least, the available driving width could be unchanged, and that might require something more besides just a red curb. But it seems to me it wouldn't necessarily have to lead to increased speeding behavior if it's done carefully. So I hope we can all find a way to make these many goals work together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I want to bring it back to the commission. And John, I had a question, perhaps you can address this, but if the street is one way and everything else is left the same, wouldn't the speed increase in general? Because there wouldn't be oppositional cars trying to pass?
What I would say is, I wouldn't say it would be the same all the way across Washington, but generally yes. When you don't have the expectation that a car might be coming towards you on a narrow street, because you're on a one-way street, speeds tend to be higher, yes. If we changed to nothing. So in other words, if the cars were still parked on the sidewalk and you simply changed the street to a one-way street, then yes.
Okay. Peggy, did you have any thoughts?
I'm just thinking about what he said. Not right now.
Okay. Francis, you're holding on presenting the second presentation.
And if you want to see it, I also just had a couple quick comments on the sidewalk width. I don't know if that's relevant right now, since I'm already here. On the south side, I think we have a max of 42 inches from memory. It nowhere is at 4 feet, and it pinches down to about 34 inches in quite a long section. And if we had a map, I could also show you where the telephone poles obstruct the sidewalk. But on the north side, it gets down to about 32, 33 inches near Catherine's Walk. And a little further below Gateview, it was as low as 18 inches before the tree trimming, bush trimming. And now I think it's down to about 30 inches min and maybe 36, 38 max. They're both substandard sidewalks. So we started with the problem.
Sure. Thank you.
So the maps that Francis is talking about, they're on the Albany Rollers and Strollers webpage. If you go to current projects and then you go to sidewalk census, they have a whole series of maps. And actually, I I don't know that I ever noticed that these maps were actually broken down the way that you have them on the website. I think the only thing I had seen before was width clear, but they actually have a whole series of maps. There's different maps that talk about whether or not the sidewalk's been uplifted. They talk about whether or not cars are parked on on the sidewalk. They do have one map that talks just about the width of the sidewalk if you were to not have any obstructions.
So I'll go as fast or as slow as you're interested in if you want to hear the population trends. The main point, just to preview, the reason I think it's relevant is this area, West Albany, has grown the fastest with families and has by far the most families of any census tract, children going to school-age children of any census tract in Albany. And it's on a path to grow again. And we can see the data. I've been talking to AUSD for their enrollment model, and that's where this comes from. And it just suddenly occurred to me it's really relevant. Our neighborhood is flipping from a non-family neighborhood to a very family neighborhood. And that's partly why we have conflict between people who think it's more important to have the sidewalk clear. They'll tend to be the young families, and folks who think it's more important to keep it as it is, the folks who've been here 20 or 30 years. I mean, it's just suddenly dawned on me today. So if you're interested, I can run through it real quick. We added about 2,000 residents from 2000 to 2010. We're up to closer to 19,000 today. If you look at the 9 and under population, about half are west of San Pablo, which is quite interesting. And a lot of the kids under 5 live in University Village. It kind of skews all the data. They're very young skewed, and those kids tend to turn over after 2-3 years, but that's more of an AUSD issue. We go ahead to the next one. This is just the census tracts, how it's broken down. So when I say West Albany, I'll tend to refer to 4203, because again, the University Village is just a whole different animal. It just changes in ways that are not normal for a normal city. Go ahead to the next one. This is the current 2000 versus 2010, the percent of households with 1 or more children of school age. And you can see it went from 25 to 31 in West Albany, 31 to 37 in Central, pretty flat in East. Go to the next slide. This is size and count of families. So the families are getting larger, and there's more of them. That's the short of it. Go ahead. So this is children 5 to 19 years, school-age children, net new in the last 10 years. So 200 net new in West Albany, a little over 200 in Central, and about 75 in East. And this is the current percentage of total AUSD enrollment if you take just a look at the census data. You're not correlating, not saying everyone in Albany who lives in Albany goes to Albany schools, but most do. So you've got almost a quarter of the school-age population in that quadrant. If you go ahead to the next slide. Change in population over the last 10 years, you can see Central has exploded. 4204 is University Village. That's skewed because they took the last census when they had everyone out to do the rebuilding. Then everyone moved back in, they took the next census. So the census data, you got to understand that. It looks like a lot more growth there than it actually is. So mainly, if you take that out, most of the growth, you can see it's happening in our neighborhood in West Albany. A lot of very young families, I think it is, right? Yeah. Younger families as well as school age. What's happening more in Central is, in my view, is people are moving into rentals to be in the school district. What you're seeing in West Albany is more people buying homes and planning to live here, having their kids here. Go ahead to the next one. So this is, again, just another way to look at the breakdown of ages. And if you go ahead to the next one, summary, 4203 being West Albany, highest number of kids, densest population, but it's also the place where you're going to add the most kids because we're only at 31%. And we can see some other stats if we go ahead to the next slide. Go ahead and skip that one, not too relevant. Go ahead, skip that one. So again, just looking at different age distributions, but I think we've made the main point there. Go ahead to the next one. House vintage and turnover. This is why I'm confident that we are going to see growth in West Albany. Go ahead to the next one. You can see there's a marked difference going from 4201 is 4206 or far east, going to the west. The housing stock It's of different vintage. The houses up east were built first, and then if you go to the next one, you can see years in present household. And if you kind of dig through that data, you can see we're going to flip. There's a lot of folks who've been here a long time. At some point, they're going to want to move or rent, potentially. But we're going to get more families in, because that's what we tend to get. You can see a huge growth, 6% growth. 6-point growth is almost 25% growth in families in 10 years, which is astronomical. If you go ahead on to the next one, the other significant disparity that's originated in the last 10 years, go ahead and flip forward to the next slide if you have it, is the change in income. And this is kind of an interesting fact. If you've been around Albany longer than I have, you've probably seen it more clearly than I have, but it was pretty clear. Albany was fairly what I would call a mix of blue collar and white collar when I moved here. And now it's pretty much a ski jump going straight down from east to west. Kind of interesting. If you look at, go ahead and flip to the next one. Vehicles per household, again, significant differences between different parts of Albany. Of the ones outside of University Village, we tend to have the least vehicles. Kind of interesting, but we have the biggest traffic problems, I would say. Go ahead to the next slide. Average walk to school, skewed towards the west again, because a lot of our kids live out in the towers, and they have a significant walk. It's not easy to get over the hill. You have to go around. So go ahead and go to the next one. More growth coming. This has to do with the Albany General Plan that's being revised. It's probably going to be done in a year or so, but there's clearly growth coming, and it's going to be focused on the San Pablo corridor, which is getting zoned for mixed-use housing. The two big developments we've seen in the last 10 years added 60 new units, 2 and 3 bedroom. Those are family size. That has to do with Measure C. You aren't going to build studios in 1 bedrooms when you have to put 2 parking spots in. You're going to put 2 and 3 bedrooms in. So we're going to see family growth along San Pablo with the zoning plan that's in place today, the one that's being pushed through. Go ahead to the next one. Just parcel tax distribution. I think it's really interesting that our portion of Albany, we have 22.4% of the kids. We contribute 28.4% of the parcel taxes. And if you look at the if you combine the 2 other census tracts, it's approximately equal. But disproportionate taxation, I would argue. It just statistically, because we're very dense. We have a lot of folks here, and it's parcel taxes based on units. That's just how it works out. Next slide. Gross property tax. It's interesting, it's also skewed there. It has, again, to do with the sheer number of units. The housing's more expensive in the east, but we have a lot here in our tract. You go ahead to the next one. There is one. So that was it. Just basically trying to show that the growth in kids is here in this neighborhood. The preference of the population is going to change with that change in demographics. And I think families clearly want a safe route to school, want access for the kids to the sidewalk, because that's where kids ride their bike. And I didn't know until recently, adults are allowed on the sidewalk on a bike if you're riding with kids. I always went in the street and tried to figure out a way. But I just don't want to lose sight of that fact. So thank you very much.
Francis, that was really interesting. I don't want to discuss it right now, but is there any way we could get a copy of that?
She has a copy, and
Oh, great, okay.
Jeff Bond has a copy too.
Great, thank you.
Marla, so.
Well, that's a lot of information. So what are we trying to accomplish tonight, Alida?
Well, tonight is the initial discussions. Basically, the neighborhood was notified about this meeting, and this is an opportunity for the residents to speak about the ideas that were presented and to suggest more ideas. I think it's a discussion that should be continued, and I think we can actually see if the easiest way to test would be to red curb the middle segment of Washington Avenue, because it's already kind of red curb. We would allow parking on the northern portion, which actually will be a gain of 3 spaces. That's something that we could do and see how that block actually, the traffic patterns. We can actually have another speed and volume survey. We will have to implement build the cut, the crosswalk, the raised crosswalk. I think we should do it all together with that, and it's for Catherine's Walk. And that has to be, we'll have to consult with traffic engineers because we have to really run the site visibility triangles, and somebody has to sign it.
Okay, so are you proposing to do those things in the near term, or?
Well, if it's okay with the residents right now, I think we should really do the test. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that right now I do have, I'm receiving quotes to actually build, to install the bulb outs that were actually mimicked by the barricades. The bulb outs will be 2 phases. One is just striping because the city does not have a budget for the actual bulb outs, with curbs and gutters and everything. But right now, it's going to be striping and some kind of pavement markers to alert motorists, especially coming and going to Gateview, that they're actually traveling on the bulb outs. Eventually, one day, those bulb outs will be concrete, actually raised, real bulb outs. But that's something I'm getting quotes right now for the design, and that's something I can comment on, maybe not in December, but in January. Because I think we're getting right now the quotes. So unless Ray has something else to add, what do you think, Ray?
Actually, I think what Public Works is proposing is we are going to do several things at the same time. Number one is currently with the temporary bulb out, Aleda already did some speed survey and found out it's effective. So she's going to get a consultant to finish the drawing with the design so that we can get a bid from the contractor to construct. At the same time, I'm trying to find fundings to pay for this project because this is not part of the CIP, but I do owe it to the people in Washington and also on Polk Street that we do need to install certain measure to kind of do traffic calming in the area. The other thing is about the red curb that we presented today. I do recommend the commissioner to tell us to proceed to go ahead and at least paint the red curb and see how that goes. And then we will come back in a month or 2 and come back and then give you some report, verbal report, to tell how effective it is. The good thing about painting the red curb is, number one, is water-based. Number two, is very low cost. It's different from putting actual concrete in there. So this is something that after we put the red curb, if it is effective or not effective, it will clearly show whether it can help lower the speed, whether it's going to help open up the sidewalk for many of the pedestrians and residents. So we can immediately see the effect. And then if there's any adjustment or whatever, we'll come back and then we'll talk about it. And then we'll be happy to do certain adjustment to make sure it's going to be pleased the people on Washington Street.
So are you suggesting do it as shown here, the entire Washington?
What we can do is, excuse me, what we can do is we can do in 2 phases. The first phase is from Pierce to Polk, and then the second phase is beyond Polk. The reason is based on our data shows a lot of people when they speed from Pierce going uphill. So that will kind of show the immediate reaction on how good this measure is. And then after we implement this one, maybe 2 weeks later, then we can paint further up east of Polk. And Commissioner, the whole idea is, I've been with the city for 1 year, but what I was being told by both the residents and my staff is this issue has been lingering for many years. I think we owe it to the resident that we need to do something and at least, try it out and see if it works. And then, we can keep talking on paper, it's not going to do anything. Until we actually do something, then we know. And what I'm trying to suggest is painting the red curb is a very low cost, and we can immediately see the result.
Okay.
Is there, I think this is fine to do, but I'm going back to the traffic calming and slowing the traffic down. And we've talked in other areas about putting a white stripe near the parking for visual friction. Is there any value, to doing that at the same time, putting red curb on one side and the white stripe by the car on the other side? Just
Yeah, we
to
can do
think
that.
about slowing it down. It's not, you've already got your paintbrush. And it's a low cost. If it doesn't work, you paint over it. And is that a possibility? Does that have value?
Yes, it's a value, actually. We have to decide which width we want to do it, 11, 10, or 12. So that's basically it. Whatever.
Wait, I don't know that we can put a stripe.
No, stripe the white. For example, if you have this option on a legal paper, then you have one side stripe, then it's 21 feet, I think, there between Pierce and Gateview. That's one of the narrowest points. So you have 7 or 8 feet for parking, then you have a lane, a virtual lane of about 12 feet or something like that.
But can we put a white stripe if it's still two ways, the street?
We're suggesting
Right,
it on the
because what
street.
you're saying, if I'm understanding what you're saying, Peggy, is to put a white stripe either at 7 feet so that you know where to park.
Yeah.
Or perhaps a little bit further out so that it narrows it visually down. Can we actually do that if it's two-way? Because then you're marking this, all right, I'm not sure. This is where I wish Fareed was sitting right there. He would tell me the answer.
Can
we'll have to
can
do
we research it?
We can do a research, exactly, because I don't really remember the guidance, but it's possible in order to actually decrease the width of the lane. It's still going to be two ways, but.
Because even if we can't, what I would say is if we can't put a full white line, can we at least mark
The
use
spaces?
tick marks for the spaces, which there may be more leeway to get that in through the standards than to put a full stripe.
Okay.
Personally, I do not like the T marks because people with smaller cars get creative, and actually the parking is more efficient without any markings. Let me think about it. We're going to report back on these things.
Commissioner, I think the idea is very good. What we can do is because there's certain technical issues, So what we're going to do is we are going to put it as part of our consultant package so that the expert is going to look into it, and then we'll come back and then make more report on it.
I guess if you're asking us to tonight say go ahead and red curb, I would say, following Peggy's thing, I would say go ahead and red curb and do whatever you can with additional striping without necessarily coming back to us. Because I don't want it to be that you come back in December, you say, well, we've come back and we talk about it again, but you haven't gotten a chance to red curb because you're waiting for us.
No, don't get me wrong. The red curb is exactly what I'm asking you to decide tonight.
Okay.
As long as you said, go ahead, red curb, we will red curb it.
Okay.
And then the direction is look at other options to reduce the width of the lane because most likely it's going to be speeding. However, with the two-way direction, it's not. It's not us making it one way,
Do we need a motion?
Through the chair, do you still want to hear from the public regarding this action or the potential action?
Well, we have several people who want to speak. I can give you about a minute each if you step quickly up to the podium.
English is my second language.
If you want to speak in Spanish and I can translate?
No, I'm perfectly able to communicate what I think in English and Spanish as well. But what I'm trying to point it out is that here the audience of neighbors, I didn't see, because English is my second language, but you might be correcting me. I didn't see or hear anybody supporting of the neighbors the idea of red curving totally one side or both of the Washington. And I see like the paneling, it's making a proposal that didn't come from any of the people who's here. So, but please correct me if I'm wrong, because as I said, second language might not be enough for me to understand.
Just a couple of very quick points. I think most of us would prefer the raised crosswalk if there's money available before the bulb outs. We think that's going to be more effective. I do. I would limit the first phase from Gateview to Polk because there is strong opposition to the striping further out. And again, I'm all about the calming first, and that's the critical area. And while you do that, take the double yellow out over the crest as well so that there's less paint right there. I think that would help slow things.
I'm sorry, did you say, what did you say then?
The double yellow line
Oh, the double
between
yellow.
Gateview to Polk.
Yeah.
Take that off the road when you're, and do put the squares in to mark the spots, because then you want the cars on the street, and that will help them feel like it's their spot, so.
Francis, I'm sorry, can I ask you a question? Oh, lady, I think you had a question first, though.
Yeah, the first, what is the first, you said something about, I know I can go through the recording, but I mean, I want to just.
Yes, so I said three things. I think we would prefer the
Raised
raised
crosswalk?
crosswalk before the bulb outs if money is going to be spent on in a significant way.
Well, we do have funds for the raised crosswalk. So I think I mentioned that to you on Monday.
If there's a choice,
Yeah.
I would do that order.
We don't have in the CPI, we don't have the bulb outs, but the two phases of the bulb outs are striping with
okay.
markers first.
Okay.
And when we do the next budget, we're going to actually, what Ray said, we're going to try to get them. We're going to make the case for the actual bulb outs.
Then the second point was just to limit the first phase of this project to Gateview to Polk, because it's the most critical area. And then the third point was just take the double yellows out, because I think that would actually help.
And that's my question. Why does taking double yellow lines out help?
Because what Aleda's asking us to do if we move the parking to the north side is put the car in the street. And that's going to leave, there's no way two cars can pass there.
Yeah.
So where do you put the double yellow? Right next to the parked car?
That's right.
Or split the lane? And to me, it just makes sense to take it out.
Okay, thank you.
And removing a continuous line might also help with the slowing.
That's something that we're not going to report back. We're going to do what the guidelines recommend according to that, but we're not going to report back on the white solid line. It's something that we're going to see if we can implement to decrease speeds or the tendency to speed.
Two things. The question has come up about speed humps, and the part of Washington between Cerrito and Polk is not anywhere near as steep as the part of Cerrito from Buchanan to Solano, where there are now 2 speed bumps. So you might consider to put one in that part of the Washington Street. The second thing is, this has been going on for, I don't know, a couple years, I think, and sometime back, there were some neighbors who circulated a petition opposing red striping, and many of us signed that petition, and I'm wondering if that was ever turned into you, and if that holds any weight in what you're considering.
It was when we started. I just want to clarify that when we started discussing this issue, I think that's what you're referring to. That the petition was circulated and actually turned into the city. Most likely, I have it, and basically. Oh no, I don't. No, really? Oh, then I was, because I remember something before, way before that, than 6 months ago.
It's been a long process.
Okay. Okay. If you have a copy, or I might have a copy. Then if you turn it into me, then I have it.
Yeah, I don't know who circulated it.
Okay.
So I don't get it. I mean, our neighborhood is strongly opposed, and we have a big conversation about how we're strongly opposed at the end, and you sit and nod, and then, and there's no logic, to me at least. You're not removing the other obstacles to accessibility first. You're just implementing the things that are inconvenient and unwanted by our neighborhood, which is the redlining. You know, do the other things first. Don't just do what makes us the most unhappy and that is the least popular and that we've all signed petitions about and that we really, really, really don't want. Yeah, and I don't understand about studying effectiveness for redlining. I assume that you just mean for the speed issues, which I don't think any of us disagree with measures to control the speed, but I think it's very clear that we do disagree with measures to redline the parking, and so please, you know, may I make a motion to not do that and to continue thinking about it.
Actually, Peggy's brought something to my attention. In the agenda, the recommended action is continued discussions. So we didn't actually think we were going to be taking any action this evening. Does that preclude us from taking action?
Well, you can do whatever, if you, that's a recommended action that, and I want to take responsibility, Ray. I actually wrote the agenda, and that's in my initial report, actually, I said that this is the initial discussion. The only suggestion I had is to do, if you want to take an action, to do the gate view to Polk, because it's already red, and because we're going to see there how only one side would actually, how red curving only one side would actually change that portion of Gateview or of Washington, and could also be a precedent, or just come back to the neighbors and said, hey, this is working, so we have to really pursue the other options. But that's basically what we wanted to do. And how we're going to study that, the way we've been studied like 3 times already. We have pneumatic hoses there that actually measure the speed and the volume on your street, and it's actually giving us data that actually can take into consideration the results of the measures that we implement. That's basically my 2 cents. But also we have the suggestion by Ray, and it's up to you to actually decide.
My understanding is that the only issue we would run into is if instead of recommended action, it said report only.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm not comfortable with, yet, with one side redlining a massive area at this point. I would be interested in a smaller area, perhaps Gateview to Polk Street. I think that would be a way to test it. Ma'am, I've let you speak 3 times.
At the crest, it's red on both sides right now, right? So aren't we actually removing some of the red curbing if we go to this Gateview to Polk Street? Am I missing something?
We're allowing parking on the north side of Washington by doing that, and then having the pedestrian circulation on the south side. We will have to do the speed, as I said, the raised crosswalk, which will work as a speed hump there. So.
But we're still losing some of the red on the north side, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. We're losing some red, yeah.
So I guess my problem with not doing a bigger piece is we're kind of stepping backwards, and part of putting it alternating is to see how it works as a traffic calming. And if we're only doing a small piece and we're taking away a lot of the red, even though we're adding the raised crosswalk, I'm not sure we're going to get a good a good test.
Well,
Yeah, go.
I hear you, and, but I'm looking at the proposed red striping, and it's really mostly a one-side red striping solution.
Well, here and here is one side and here's one side.
If you look at throughout Washington, it's a staggered one.
I'm sorry, it's staggered where?
If you, for example, from Cerrito to Polk, it's on the,
North.
from Cerrito to Polk, but you wanted to project it, isn't it? So is it there?
Just so the public can see what we're talking about.
Okay. From Cerrito to Polk is basically not allowing on one side. We can actually change depending on how we heard tonight that people kind of would like to have the red curve on the south side instead of the north side because they park directly in front of their houses. But that's something that, I mean, is open for discussion. Then from Polk to Gateview is a red curve in the south side, and the opposite from Gateview to Pierce is on the north side. So it's staggered.
So, Elena, if I can just clarify, so what you're saying is people will now be able to park here,
Not on the red curve, yeah.
on the north side, and on the other side of...
People will be able to park on the north side.
Okay, except for this one part?
Yeah, because of visibility, and that could vary a little bit because of, we have to run the
Right. So as a
site.
comparison today, what you're saying is there's going to be red curve remaining here, but this red curve would be removed.
will disappear, yeah, yeah.
So, again, if we only do that part, then we're going to have less red curb than we have now.
Yes.
What I would say is we'll have less red curb than we have now, but we'll also narrow down Washington at the crest because there'll be parking now there. So if you could think about it, if you were driving up from Pierce, you might be kind of hitting the accelerator, going up, 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 and when you get to the crest, once you go over the crest, from the crest down to Polk right now, there's no, well, there's 2 parking spaces, but there's essentially no parking there. The road is really wide. So now, if we let cars park all along the north side, visually that part of the road should narrow from what it is today. It also gives us the opportunity to test it where we've got parking on one side of the street, red curb on the other, get a feel for how wide that is for cars at the crest, as an image of what might happen in the future between Polk and Cerrito.
And I can measure that block only. I mean, it would give measurement of speed on that block.
It is interesting, though, because our first move will be to actually remove red curbing as opposed to putting red curbing in.
Right, and I think we're not getting the benefit of the stagger, and I think that's an important piece, and I think if...
Yes,
you know,
that's true.
I kind of feel like it's all or nothing, because if you're going to test it, you kind of have to do it, and...
Well, if we understand, with the understanding that it's going to be, let's say, a month or 2 month test, usually 3 months takes 3 months for people to accommodate. So I wouldn't suggest to test it immediately after it's implemented because we might get skewed results, but maybe within a month of implementation. If you want to do it as a temporary measure.
I definitely think it should be a temporary testing measure.
And then we hear from the neighborhoods and from the residents, and they will provide feedback maybe in January or February or something like that, and then we can go from there. Well, we would like to test it. It's a temporary measure, the same way we have the barricades, and we did try to do some planters by Cerrito, but we couldn't do it. But that's basically this. What is it?
When they start going 30 miles an hour on average during the test, why is that okay?
Well, maybe not. We're going to have the speed, the raised crosswalk, though. So, we suggest to test it for 1 or 2 months, test test the speed in volumes and report back, and it's only paint. We can actually, it's only water-based paint. We can make it gray again or red again, whatever it was, and the whole thing, so.
And in the test, would we also explore the other visual slowing cues, like if we could do a white line, is that?
The white line will go almost immediately as the red line. I mean, maybe the red would go first, the white would go 1 week later or something like that.
Yes, I think it's important to do all we can to try to slow the traffic. I mean, I think it's all one piece. It's not one and the other.
I guess when I pictured staggering, I thought it was inner block, so that there was weaving in an individual block. The staggering we're looking at here is between blocks. I guess I don't see that as being as potentially effective.
The problem with this within block, the problem that we see is that you have horizontal and vertical curves there. You don't want to create this kind of situation in that topography. It's more like for straight lines, for flatter areas. But in this case, it might be a little bit. It's preferable to have one block on one direction and the other one in another direction. That's basically in terms of visibility.
Okay.
But on this hill, I wouldn't recommend the stagger, like chicane within the same block. That's my recommendation. Other people might have other ideas, but that's basically what we were talking. I'm talking to Ray about that, and we discussed it. And my take is that since there is a hill, we have to be careful with the visibility. And going like a winding situation or alignment might be compromising. If it's maybe one-way street, that might be a different story, but this is a two-way street.
Okay. Further
What do you-
discussion amongst the commissioners? Does somebody want to propose something?
Okay, I'll do it. You want, later, do we need a motion? So, I
I
guess I'm
think this
asking
is
you.
an action. It is different from what is it? If it's an action, yeah, we need a motion.
Okay, I'll move that we red curb Washington as proposed by staff. Is that clear enough?
And then you said something about traffic calming?
And implement traffic, and including the raised crosswalk at Catherine's Walk, and implement a visual, I'm not sure exactly what you want, traffic calming measures. I don't want to box you into something that can't happen.
Traffic calming measures. Additional traffic calming measures.
Traffic calming measures, and also, can we put the temporary bulb outs at Gateview and, is it Gateview and 3, or do you want those in the motion?
Well, that was not open for discussion. That's
Okay,
the bulb outs are temporary, and I'm getting estimates from consulting firms for the design of the bulb outs, of the actual bulb outs.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm done.
So we have a motion.
Second?
Okay, let's get another motion.
If we don't have a second, then we should probably go for a different motion.
I'd like to make a motion to implement the staff's recommendations between Gateview Avenue and Polk Street along Washington, of removing the red curbing along the north side as much as possible, and completing the red curbing along the south side of Washington.
Between Gateview and Polk, you said?
Correct.
Uh-huh.
And continue with the proposed crosswalk at Catherine's Walk. Correct. Sorry, as a test, to be have reported back to us in, I would say, 3 months. The reason why I don't say 2 months is we're about to hit December and January, so February is likely best. The other reason why I asked that we wait a little longer is that we are providing additional on-street parking that people are not used to using. So I think we should give people more time to get in the habit of actually using those parking spaces and then do the tests and see what the effects are on traffic.
The raised
Volume and
crosswalk
speed.
most likely be permanent because that's,
Sorry.
the
Okay.
raised crosswalk
And is
will be
that
permanent.
something that will happen in the next month or 3 months, or is that still 6 months out?
In about 3 months, if we get
Oh.
the three
So then,
informal.
can I just make that the crosswalk be separate, because that's,
Yeah, otherwise.
I'll take that out of my motion. Sorry. So I'm changing, just remove the crosswalk.
Second for that.
I'll second that.
Vote.
Discussion?
Discussion, yeah. No,
All right.
not seeing any. I think we're just going to keep rolling with this, I'm sorry. We've had a lot of input, and we just have to make a decision. So. 10 seconds?
A testing way to do this could be as well, if the panel could have the block where you live painted red, the curve, as well, the gentleman says only paint. I volunteer to paint that so you guys could have a sense of what is not having enough space on your neighbor to park and having the issues that causes. That might make you feel the way that neighbors are, or neighborhood feel when we have roads painted outside of our houses.
Thank you. I think I understand what you said, which was he's volunteering to come to our house and paint the curb. Do I understand that correctly? Thank you. All right. I'll just say that there are parking issues where I live as well. And they're a little different, but there are certainly issues. Let's have a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll certainly keep an eye on this test and revisit it going forward.
Can I make a separate motion
For the crosswalk?
for the crosswalk?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that staff continue to explore the crosswalk at Catherine's Walk, the raised crosswalk.
Explore or implement?
I don't know that we can tell them to implement. I don't know if that has to go to council, but yes, implement. However strongly we can put it to get that built.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair, if we're going to move on to the next item, can I ask for a 15-minute break?
15?
Sorry, 5-minute maybe? I see my children walking past that window frequently.
They're looking impatient. Let's, we've got some people waiting for the next item. Can we take a 5-minute break? I want to thank everybody who came and participated in this item. If you're leaving, thank you. So we'll take just a 5-minute break. If you need the restroom, the group restrooms are down the hall and to the left in that direction.
Item is the request for the installation of 2 disabled parking stalls at 956 Castro Street. Well, basically, the commission discussed it last month, and there is a request for 2 disabled parking spaces by a resident of 956 Castro. Castro has a slope of about 11.4%. Your recommendation last month was for staff to conduct some research for 2 things. What is the minimum or basically maximum slope allowed for parking spaces, disabled parking spaces? And the other research item was if a property owner could block his or her own driveway. According to we conducted the research, and according to the California Vehicle Code, the blocking of your own driveway is not allowed. It could be actually ticketed by the police department or by the police officer. It's a violation to the California Vehicle Code. And what is the rationale behind your own driveway is that, in general, that's the prohibition from the California Vehicle Code. So sometimes when a car is parked in a driveway, the police officer is not going to go knock on every house and say, is that your car or somebody else's car? So in order to avoid that and to basically save the police officers from going and knock on people's doors, there's no differentiation between if it's your driveway or somebody else's driveway. So it's prohibited. In past conversations, the fire department actually said that they use the driveway to access in case of emergency. In many cases, they have used the driveway, so they want it clear. The second aspect to research was the maximum, the allowed slope for parking spaces. Just to give you a background, the Americans with Disabilities Act law does not really provide specifics for on-street parking. The only requirement that they have for cities and jurisdictions and counties is that they provide curb ramps cuts. However, they actually assume and they encourage every jurisdiction to actually develop policy to provide accessible parking spaces on the street, on public streets. And with that in mind, we have researched a lot of the available information on the website of the Department of Justice. I included, there is guidelines for small towns there that actually talk about on-street parking. And whatever is allowed in private parking lots or parking structures is actually translated into the street. So I'm going to clarify that between the allowed ramp to actually serve all users that are disabled is between 1.5% and 2%. That's basically taken into consideration in the guidelines for curb ramps. For buildings, the Americans with Disabilities Act provide guidelines for the implementation of ramps, with the assumption that once you open your door, you have a landing of that slope, which is between 1.5 and 2%. So you don't want to, when you open your door, any door, either a car or a room, you don't want to just go into a slope immediately, but onto a flat area, and then you can go into a slope of 8.33%. That's the maximum in new buildings. In all buildings, you cannot exceed 13%. That's basically when we talk about retrofitting. But as I said before, and I want to stress this, in that case, we can say, because at the beginning it was, oh yeah, we can do it on Castro, so it's 11.4. But the understanding is that once you open your door, you have to be flat. It's an area of at least, I think, is it 36 inches, I think, that it has to be flat. And in order to actually maneuver your wheelchair, because they're assuming that people with the people in wheelchair will use that space too. So that's basically what we found out, and given the physical characteristics of Castro, it doesn't seem feasible that we can actually provide the blue curve there. If anything, it would be on the flat area, which is Madison, and basically about 20 feet from the intersection in order to allow for visibility. And that's, I understand that it's not good for you, but this is the law. We're liable if somebody else used the space. And I was trying to really, when I saw that the maximum is 30%, I said, yes, we can do it. But then I read that it has to be flat. So,
Well, if you want to speak, we'll give you a chance to speak. But right now, we get to ask questions, and then
Yeah.
it'll be your turn.
So that's my report. And also another recommendation I have at the end of this report is that this is actually an opportunity to develop the policy that the Americans with Disabilities Act is requesting from jurisdictions. We only have in the municipal code basically a guidance on how to request the blue curves that in the forms and everything, but we do not have design guidelines specified and adopted that we can use as a policy. I mean, you can say, you can just go to the Americans with Disabilities Act and use those guidelines, but at least, and that's a de facto policy. But it would be really good to have something that the city actually calls its policy, like the one that we have with the traffic calming, for example. So that's basically my recommendation. So I could entertain questions right now.
Well, I don't have any questions, but I'm thinking about the policy, and perhaps that should be part of the parking subcommittee?
That's correct.
Since we have done
That'd
so
be
much
great
so
if you would
far.
take that on. That would be great, yeah. John, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I was able to watch this portion of the meeting last month, so
Great.
I did hear a lot of the conversation.
Great. I don't have any questions. Would you like to speak? Go ahead. I guess one question would be if are you still wanting to pay for a handicap spot if it's going to be on Madison?
I did actually have one question. Sorry, I didn't realize you were asking questions of members of the public. When you enter your house, are you entering off of, so you have a gate between your house and your garage? Is that the way you get in? So you get into the backyard and then you're able to more easily get into your house? Okay. Okay.
11.4. And before, when I was doing the research, I was doing different kind of like elevations because I actually measured the slope between 20 feet from the intersection with Madison and another 20 feet in order to allow for one parking space, which is about 10%. And as I said, I was actually getting really happy. I said, yeah, we can do it. But then when I ran into the issue of the flat area to actually land your wheelchair, then I was completely discouraged and said, well, we cannot do it even. We tried.
Sorry it didn't work out for you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
So I think we'll move along to item number C.
So, John, were you able to?
Actually, I do have one question before you leave, if you don't mind. Just to back up, because maybe I missed this from last meeting, is the request for the blue curb because people park on Castro and essentially take the spot that you need? And is that all day long, or is that just during school hours because of the elementary school? Okay. Okay.
Weekends could be rough. Just at school and just
Yeah.
people working
Sure. Just trying to think if there was a way to, I guess that wouldn't necessarily help them, but I was thinking if there was a limited parking time during the day, whether that would free up a space when you got home at night versus actually going for a blue curb. But
Well, there is the limited parking that council implemented a long time ago, that we can go all the way. But
right?
we
And if that time-limited parking is only during school hours, which might be a time when, for instance, you're not home, then that would be an alternative so that when you came home, there might be a greater chance that there was a free parking space.
and John, are you talking about that spot in front of their house? Not
For
only,
a portion of Castro Street, if we weren't going to be specific about his house, but it could be, because that is right next to the elementary school, not the elementary school, sorry, the
Children's Center.
The Children's Center.
But then the people on Madison have already got a parking place, and they straight around the corner.
I see. So that wouldn't necessarily help you at evening time.
Between Madison and Jackson,
Okay.
or during the day, would be fine.
Okay.
Because I've had to have
Yeah.
cars towed, and there are 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is two things. One is I don't think we can actually do a motion on something that's not a blue curb tonight. So if we were to do something on time limit, it would have to come back to us. Apologies, it would have to be next month, but it is something that we could consider that would be different. Because in that case, we are not constrained by the ADA guidelines because we're not providing a blue curb spot. We are providing a
A parking
time-limited spot during the day. I don't know if that would really, how much that would necessarily help you, but it is something that we could talk about.
if you want to agendize it, then either January, February, December, or you're going to be here in December?
Yes, December would be a great month for me.
Okay.
So I have to turn in an application, is that what you're saying?
I don't know if
There's
you
no
actually have to
application.
apply for an application for that. We do need a public notice differently than for a blue curb,
There's no application for that.
for that type of parking.
That you need to go to the parking subcommittee?
This is the parking.
Well, it would not. It would not. It would simply come back to us, but we would have to notice everyone in the neighborhood, within a certain radius.
So, I mean, it's going to take care of
Yeah.
that. How do we determine what hours?
Well, it's going to be
I think
next.
that would be part of the discussion.
That's part of
that
the
happen.
discussion.
And I think what we would likely, Aleda, I think what we would likely want to do is reach out to the preschool and understand any issues, if they've been having issues, again, with parking.
The only thing that I have to say is that the other meeting is on December 17th. And I do have a lot of reports for the grant
Oh.
applications that I have.
Okay.
I do have a big report for the VRF and Measure B, in addition to different invoices that I have to actually make and invoice the granting agency. So it's going to be very busy. And I wouldn't have time to actually research to the outreach to this children's center. In my new department, I do have problems with clerical help. So all of these notifications, I went door by door and actually leave them there under the welcome mat because I just wanted to avoid the creation of labels, and I don't have any assistance really. It's becoming a little bit difficult.
Okay.
Well, and I think we would,
So I'd rather do it in January.
I think we kind of need to think about, I mean, why would it just be Castro? Is it Castro Street? The one you're I mean, there's other streets around there. I'm not sure we can just, I'm not sure I want to just unilaterally say, yeah, let's talk about this block. Well, what about Jackson? You know, I think this needs to have a little bit of thought.
Yeah.
And I think
We could talk about it in the bigger picture of Jackson. We did, a year ago, make changes on Jackson. I believe we moved the blue and green curves. We switched them.
Right, yeah.
In front of the,
There is something else to consider too, is sometimes there's a need to park there all day long. One of our cars, my wife, she stays, she's a homemaker. So she's.
that's the thing that I'm recommending wouldn't help with that.
No, I know. So there has to be permanent parking, something like that.
Well, then that's a broader issue. That's basically bringing back the permit parking that the Washington Avenue, Jordan San Pietro and his neighbors actually brought some time ago to this commission. So so permit parking is an option. So it's fine. But we have to really come up with the program.
But it has to be an area, right? It
It
can't
has to
be
be an
a
area.
house.
It has to be one house. It has to be an area, and 67% of the neighbors should actually approve it. We do have the guidelines in the municipal code right now for that. We can discuss that as well.
Discuss it at next meeting?
Next meeting, well, we can start without any research. I cannot promise to do any research for next meeting, but we can start the discussion for sure. And
Well, I mean, I would say, actually, I thinking about it more than what Peggy said, I don't think it makes sense for us to talk about it until we have some research from the school and see what the parking issues are, if any, with the school, and what may fall out of that.
So how about January?
yeah, January is a better month for me. Uh-huh.
We've lived with it for a couple of years already.
And I'm sorry, but I mean, it's just me. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so January?
Yeah,
Looks like January.
Could we be the first Monday in January?
yes.
Could we interview two hours? It's kind of interesting to start with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting idea.
Try to get it into December.
Shall we move along to C?
Yeah. And John, did you have a chance to actually download the maps?
Not for C, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I did for B, but we can use that,
Do you have printouts?
there were pretty.
Oh, yeah, I do. I'm sorry. Okay, so here. So we have, oh, okay, great. Yeah, those are is a raise. Okay, so last month also, this commission asked staff to bring the discussion of the changes that are proposed by the Albany Strollers and Rollers for the striping and signage projects of the ATP. And we reported that we had a kickoff tour, bike tour, with the consulting firm Fair & Pierce, and that Harry Chomsky had actually joined us in the tour, and there were some suggestions that the Albany Strollers and Rollers had would like to make to the existing, to the approved bicycle network in the ATP. So we have right now in front of your on the screen there are about 10 changes, and actually we have also graphic for each of them. The first change, basically, I think we've heard about it before, is to continue the route on Santa Fe Avenue because it connects more directly to the Kensington area in El Cerrito. The comment number 2, which is basically suggestion number 2, is to install sharrows on Clay in order to make it connect with the proposed bicycle facility on San Pablo Avenue that the Complete Streets is actually proposing. The change number 3 is provide an uphill bike lane on Portland Avenue, and that is basically to connect with the systems in El Cerrito as well. Number 4 is provide an uphill bike lane on Peralta Avenue. I think you, I don't know if you remember, but a resident of Peralta also came here with and brought up some traffic speeding issues. The consultant team actually proposed some intersection reconfiguration by Posen and Peralta in addition to the bike lane and bike sharrows on the downhill direction, bike lane uphill and sharrows on the downhill direction. Number 5 is extend the bike boulevard on Jackson to between Solano and Washington, and continue the bicycle boulevard in Berkeley, the Keynes Avenue Bicycle Boulevard into Berkeley. I think 7, I think I skipped 7, I'm sorry. It's also, the number 7 is provide two-way bicycle connection on Talbot, and that is basically the 500 block could be, that's one with a caveat. This could be, it's not basically a provision, but it could be a test to try the barriers, the bicycle barriers, or a test to try the contraflow lanes, because it's one way right now from Brighton to the plaza is one way, so we can actually test.
It's one way out or one way in?
I think it's one way in, is that right? Yeah. So,
It's one way south currently.
So it's
south,
going
yeah.
out.
One way out,
Yeah, one way out.
That's what I imagined out is.
I just remember, because I was on tour too, when the car went past us, it was going in.
And it was.
And it was going the wrong way.
The wrong way, yeah.
That's always good.
It's great when you're on a tour and you actually see the problem. You know?
I know. I think that tour was really good, actually, to do.
Yeah,
So the number 9 actually was the comment on Pierce Street.
did that one.
And Pierce, we don't have a 9, by the way, so I just want to warn. So Pierce is actually a bicycle, share the road is already signed as a share the road. What we're going to do with this project, and I kind of emphasize with this project, is that we're going to engineer the sharrows. In a parenthesis here, the Public Works Department, where I belong now, had a problem with the sharrows because of the speeding. That was actually before the project on Pierce Street. We measured the speeds again. They actually were decreased from 33 miles per hour at 85th percentile to 30. The new MUTCD allows for the implementation of sharrows on streets that are 30 miles per hour. Now, the new one. The previous one actually warned not to. But since we have that change and we have the decrease in speeds, we're actually proposing that. And in order to actually keep everything, under the engineering judgment, I decided to actually have Fair and Pierce engineer the sharrows instead of like the city implementing them reach an agreement. That's basically what we're doing. So that's number 10, and I think that's number 9, I'm sorry. Number 10 is the implementation of the bike boulevard on Spokane. So it's between Brighton and the city limit in order to continue the El Cerrito bicycle facility. Any questions?
Where on Pierce are you talking about the sharrows?
Throughout Pierce.
So from Buchanan all the way out
to the city limit.
And is it just sharrows or is it bike lanes on the uphill and sharrows on the?
Sharrows, both ways.
Because the roadway's too narrow for a bike lane, if I remember.
We don't have enough room for bike lanes. We're actually, I think one of the next streets to actually talk about sidewalk parking is the 900 block of Pierce.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So on the one where we have Portland here, so one proposal is to take Santa Fe through and not jog over to.
That's
Curtis.
right, yeah.
So just to clarify, this arrow that was added here goes all the way to Curtis. Is the idea that the bike lane stops at Santa Fe, or would it go all the way to Curtis?
I think it will stop on Santa Fe. What is your understanding, Harry?
My understanding was that it would.
It will go throughout?
That it goes all the way to the city limit because the idea is to get you to Calusa.
Oh.
Which is
So the idea is that this, in theory, would be extended, because it doesn't show up, but.
It doesn't show.
In theory, Berkeley would pick this up.
To Ensenada?
Is that what you're saying?
Was that your understanding here?
Excuse me, Harry, can you come to the mic? I got a text that the audience
point.
isn't being heard.
My understanding is that Portland was an east-west route that, and the purpose of it was not just to connect to Santa Fe or Curtis, but as a general east-west route through the city, and therefore should be extended to the city limit.
Okay.
And also my understanding was that the consultants looked at the width and recommended, or at least wanted to consider, bike lanes in both directions, and if there wasn't room for that, give preference to bike lanes in the uphill direction.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, it says here, I have a comment from President. It says, Portland east of Memorial Park is shown as slated for sharrows. However, the street appears wide enough for a cycling lane on both sides. Inner stripe at least 13 feet off the curve to create a non-door zone lane. If this stretch of Portland is wide enough, so it's still, we don't know, for a lane only, on one side, the lane should be in the uphill direction and sharrows in the downhill direction. There is precedent for this in the ATP. Posen is designated for a cycling lane in the uphill direction and sharrows in the downhill direction. This affects, okay, that's basically it. Question?
I have a question about Spokane. I think I didn't understand. From Brighton to where?
What number is that, Spokane?
I have no idea. Maybe it's 9. Maybe it's 10.
10. Bike Boulevard.
So to the city limit, is that what it's showing?
10. Spokane north of Brighton should be shown as a proposed bike boulevard to match El Cerrito proposing Behrens as a bike boulevard. That is the end of the, okay, that's basically.
So it's,
To the city limit, I think. Behrens is the lane that you see dotted right now. Is that right? Yeah, that's Behrens.
so it's all of Spokane to
The city limit.
the El Cerrito city limit.
Uh-huh.
It's only
Yeah.
Right, it's really short. I kept thinking it must be more than that, that's all.
No, because it connects with the dotted line in El Cerrito, which is Behrens.
But the Albany part. My understanding was that the Albany part of it is very short, and it's only there to extend the El Cerrito Bike Boulevard all
From
the way to
Brighton.
the middle school.
From Brighton to El Cerrito. But
The
why
bike-
not
sorry,
doing it
to
all the way
clarify,
through, I'm sorry?
The
sorry.
bike boulevard is only signage, so there's nothing on the ground necessarily, right? It's just
The
signage saying-
sharrows and the purple.
Oh, it is sharrows, okay.
The sharrows, yeah,
And the purple?
and the purple signage.
And then do the street signs get purple like in Berkeley at some
Yeah.
point?
And actually, we do have the wayfinding that actually have the purple. I think it's the purple, for bike boulevards, it's the purple option.
My only question there was why we wouldn't necessarily just continue it all the way.
That's what I was thinking.
Because if you go all the way to the other end, you pretty much hook up right with the Ohlone Greenway. If you go further
Why not
down.
going to Portland?
Yeah, or if you go one beyond Portland, you actually, I think Spokane actually ends up like right there.
Oh, yeah, to the
That's what I was
Ohlone-
trying to
the-
figure out.
Yeah.
To the
You end
Ohlone
up at
Greenway,
Washington,
right?
is that
Yeah.
Washington? I guess that must be Washington. I
Yeah.
get my streets confused.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yes, Washington and the Ohlone Greenway, that's what I think that's,
So basically, it would be all of Spokane.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna do that little bit,
Yeah.
why not just have it be that people visiting from El Cerrito can just go straight down Spokane and bang out
Yeah.
to Ohlone. That way they won't run over my son when he walks us to middle school.
Well, it is a key route for biking to middle school. A key route, sorry. It's a key pathway. Key, yeah.
Oh, there still is a connection there. Okay, I was just checking. I was at the end of Spokane the other day, and I couldn't remember if you could actually get through on a bike, but you can.
Pardon me.
So any questions?
I'm trying to understand Clay Street a little bit more.
Clay.
Oh, no, I get it. Okay, sorry. 'Cause
Yeah, Clay is-
Brighton, we show something at the end of Brighton, but that's going through the Albany Bowl parking lot,
That's right.
right? Okay,
So,
never mind.
yeah.
Yeah,
Clay Street's
Okay.
fine. I get it now. Was this?
Did you, I think we've run out of questions here.
Just one more comment, which was that we showed in number 5, the Jackson Street facility going a bit farther north than it had been originally. If we were able to extend that 1 block farther north even than is shown in alteration number 5, then it would connect to another school facility. So that could be another
Or to the
Another
children's
further
center, to the
improvement.
children's
Albany,
center.
Castro?
Yeah, to,
to the children's center, that's right.
And then would it turn at Castro? Is that what you're asking? Or
No, our only further suggestion is that instead of extending it 1 block further than originally shown, we extend it
It's-
2 blocks further.
it's shown to Washington, and then we can extend to Castro. Is that right,
So
Castro?
currently, you're showing, it looks like you're showing it turning here at Washington?
Yeah,
And you're saying maybe we can go 1 more
Yeah.
to Castro?
right. Just to include the
children-
children's
the
center
children's
in the
center.
network.
So Leda, what do you need from us?
Well, that's basically, this is an introduction of what we are, what we're going to do, the projects we're working on for the ATP striping and signage, and just basically, what is your opinion on this map? And as we said last month, this map is it has to be adopted by the City Council before we implement any projects, because there's some changes to it.
Sorry, the amendments to the map has to be adopted, or the map has to be adopted?
This amendment to the ATP.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we recommend to the city council that they adopt the map with the changes we've outlined this evening?
Just a work of caution, the changes have not been run through to the residents. I do not anticipate any kind of opposition, but we have,
So what kind of process do we need to go through?
that's why the last month I actually suggested that to go through, once we go through the changes with the neighbors, let's say that the neighbors approve and everything, so we don't have any opposition, so we don't have any surprises for the city council. That's basically what I just wanted to do. Just wanted to have the project with.
But isn't tonight essentially, didn't we give them notice by having a meeting tonight? I'm confused.
We didn't notice them individually.
We didn't notice any, they would be noticing the whole city to do this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, when we did the ATP, we didn't send an invitation to every person who lives.
We actually published it on the newspaper.
Oh, but we didn't do that this time.
No.
Okay.
No, because it was the first discussion we can,
Okay.
and actually, I think we should, the project description with Fair and Pierce is to actually kind of divide the city into quadrants, or maybe 4 parts, and actually group the projects, because to have a citywide meeting might be a little bit challenging. So I'm thinking that maybe we'll go with a quadrant and another quadrant of projects, and this is what it's going to be, and notice them. And that's going to be our obligation, or our due process is to do that. Once the residents come and attend and give our opinions, then we don't have any problems. Then this is vetted by the public, and we can actually recommend to the city council. So that's basically, that's my suggestion. Jeff Bond might have a different suggestion. But I don't know if we can go actually to the city council with the plan without even communicating with the public, with the residents.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure on all the noticing requirements, but it is, I mean, it's in here.
It's in there, but I don't see residents. Right. So I think in order to have a backfire, I think we should really go, even we go before the actual development of plans, or because the scope of work with Fair and Pierce involves public outreach, involves that.
So,
Sorry, so,
Gesundheit.
God bless you.
One more.
let me see if I get this right. Can we not tell you, I mean, if Fair and Pierce is going to do a public process for any changes that we
Not
talked
for the
about?
change, it's for those projects, basically.
So could we not simply say that we think Fair and Pierce should move ahead with these? And we don't have to worry about the public noticing because Fair and Pierce will do that through their own process?
Yeah.
Right, because all we're telling them is to look at these. Fair and Pierce might come back and tell us, we actually can't do these things.
Yeah, they might come back to say, okay, there is a problem with one of
Yeah.
your suggestions, or tweaks.
So
So,
I don't know how the rest of the commission feels, but I don't see why this has to come back to us before Fair and Pierce has to start work on this.
that's basically the direction that that I need
All right.
from you guys. I mean, one option was to, I think Preston actually, last month, I think he suggested to have the plan, or it was Jeff Bond, I don't remember, who suggested to have the plan approved first. And I don't know if that's your understanding. But I think one of the suggestions that I gave at that time was that we're going to have a public process with the plans, with this project. We're going to have a group public process, so we're going to do, okay, so it's for this west side, for example, it can be only 2 meetings, for the west side and the east side, whatever we decide. And then we invite everybody. And we might invite it via internet or via a newspaper publication, because a notification of that is going to be a large notification. So it could be that we do it through the cable TV or through newspaper. Just invite people to attend and listen to the, or maybe just to the blocks that are going to be changed. And even if they're not changed, I think we should really notify that we're doing that. There's going to be striping on their street pretty soon. So they keep informed. We keep them informed.
Great.
So that's my idea. So. Unless you have a different suggestion, and I can run it through Ray, and Ray and Jeff might have different opinions, but maybe we can.
What do you need from us?
Direction.
Direction.
But I'm giving you my opinion, the way of that I would think that I think is the way to go. We can actually take this plan right now and run it through the council, but I don't feel comfortable not having processed the changes.
But it doesn't need to go to council for Fair and Pierce to do the work, right? No. Right. So we could, for instance, I could make a motion. I could say a motion that that staff should continue to explore these options shown on this map with Fair and Pierce. Right. We're not asking council to make an approval. We're not. I mean, we're just saying we don't find fault with any of these.
No.
I guess we did make 2 modifications. We did ask that Spokane be looked at from the city of Albany northern boundary all the way down to Washington as a bike boulevard. And was there another change?
I think he said Castro instead of Clay, for the Jackson Street to Castro rather than Jackson Street to Clay.
Oh, Castro.
I don't know if we want to do that, but I think that was the other suggestion.
I'm confused. This was to go all the way up to Clay?
Castro.
To Castro.
Currently it's supposed to go to Castro, or currently it's...
Currently it goes to Clay, which is further
I
down.
think currently it just goes to Washington.
Yeah,
Oh.
I think that's what the drawing is showing is just to Washington.
Okay.
I mean, the other debate here was, would you go all the way to Clay since Clay we're making a Shero? Would we extend the Shero on Clay from San Pablo all the way to Jackson? It's steep, but would you do that?
I wouldn't, but
I don't.
Let's leave it like that.
I'll leave it to what this map shows. Sorry, so what we've asked is Spokane from northern boundary to Washington and to look at Jackson Street to Castro Street?
Yeah, that's basically it. And then,
Yes.
and then Castro down to Adams, is that right? Or San Pablo? We have to connect them. Harry? We have to connect from Castro down, going downslope or upslope.
So the boulevard can't just take you to the child care facility and
It could,
there?
it could,
And back.
it could.
Good,
It does
yeah.
not necessarily have to
Oh.
turn.
I mean, I don't know the slopes of the street. Someone else
Castro's 11%.
mentioned that
Well, you already have from,
that there's some steep streets involved here, and we don't want to just
from
willy-nilly
Jackson to
label them.
Madison is 11.4%.
Mhm.
That's a great exercise.
Yeah. So I don't know if we necessarily want to be encouraging people to ride there, but
Well, down is good.
But up is not.
I think it should just be continued to Castro and just along the child care center and end there.
Okay.
So
that's
the
feasible.
proposal is the bike boulevard be extended to the child care center.
And that's your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second it.
All in
Discussion.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Leda, what's the timeline on this for Fair and Pierce?
We want to have the plans, I think, 35% in January or February, and then we can discussion for 65. Might be a discussion for 95, and then council approval. Hopefully before summer
Okay.
2014. It's a matter of actually hiring a contractor to do it. We will have to work with the pavement program because some streets are not really in good shape, and we don't want to waste thermoplastic money into, no. But we can paint with water first, and then streets that are ready, for example, Santa Fe, we can actually just stripe because they're kind of ready already. Okay.
Just mention the street over there.
Next
We're not making
item?
a decision about it.
Is there one on Santa Fe, though? No, okay.
The portion of Santa Fe we were
D?
talking about, I'm sorry, Peggy raised an issue. The portion of Santa Fe we were talking about is far enough away from my home
Okay.
that I think I'm okay.
Okay. I don't want it to come back and say
Well, I
somebody
think
said
I'm
there.
talking about throughout Santa Fe that it's already paved. So,
Right. We're not making a decision on the rest
No.
of Santa Fe.
okay.
Shall we
So-
move along?
D, CD, assign representatives for a subcommittee of the Traffic and Safety and Planning and Zoning Commission to analyze Measure D, policies. Only 3 of you guys here, so
How many representatives are we being asked
it
for?
could be more than 2.
It can be more than 2?
Cannot be, or
Can be. That's what Jeff told me, so.
It says here 1 or more.
Well, because I said in the first draft of this agenda, I put 2, and he said it could be more than 2. Okay, I said. But 2, I think, is a crowd, isn't it? 2 is fine, yeah.
so I'm gonna gracefully bow out from being on a subcommittee.
Well, I'll maybe not quite so gracefully say I'd be interested in doing this.
You wanna do it? And you think that maybe Farid or who, have you heard if Farid is interested or Susan?
I have no idea.
I've not spoken with either of them.
Do you want to be?
I'm interested. I'm a little cautious of the time commitment. But
You don't go away.
Definitely not for me.
Well,
It's actually a topic that I would love to tackle, but it's, no.
so we're not ready to decide maybe for December?
Well, Peggy, can we put on listen? Is this something that actually has, I mean, does this have to be decided in a public I mean, can it just be an email between commissioners? I don't know the rules on that.
Well, what I'm gonna do is gonna send an email to all of you, blind copy, and you give me your interest, you tell me about your interest
Right,
and your
'cause
availability.
it could be that neither Fareed nor Susan want to, and in which case, then it could be Peggy, and
Well,
Peggy
Peggy
and-
already said
yeah,
that she would
yeah.
like to be there, so she's
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
I said that she's in.
There is a time crunch on this, though, that if the goal of the city is to get this on the November 2014 ballot, whatever it is, this committee needs to get started. And the committee being us and P&Z, apparently are the only two in the pool right now. So I don't really want us to wait. I don't know what they did last night. I wasn't watching.
Well, I think we should really then start with you.
And
And,
additional members could always be added. right?
And then a member can be added. I think that's a great suggestion, by the way.
Okay.
Okay. I'm in.
And if nobody else wants to do it, I might consider it more.
And I might have a better handle to tell you, we're meeting every
What the
night.
commitment is,
or,
Great,
Okay,
let's
so
move along to E.
6E, report on speed surveys, 1100 Key Route Boulevard, 100 Pomona, and 1000 Peralta. And you have the reports. The two 1100 Key Route Boulevard and 800 Pomona actually do not show consistent speeding. The only one that showed 31 miles per hour at 85th percentile is the 1000 block of Peralta. I've been communicating with the residents, Bill Cooper and Alan Eckner. Eckner. We are the bicycle proposals on Peralta Avenue actually should address some of the speeding issue. Also, there's some ideas for the reconfiguration of the intersection of Peralta and Posen, and that actually will help because a high visibility crosswalk would be added there. It's possible that we extend the contract with Fair & Pierce and ask them to design the intersection. I don't want to give high hopes, but we don't have money for the construction of whatever they propose. What they're proposing is actually make it a little bit straight. So close one leg of that intersection and actually make it straight, like a 90-degree, more or less like a 90-degree intersection.
I hear we have some temporary orange barriers that might be free in a couple months. On
We can
Washington.
do that too. So, and the idea is that basically just the westbound direction, make it a little bit wider, and that's going to be the intersection. So, and a crosswalk would be there for pedestrians, and that its hope is, well, for sure that the traffic will actually, the speeds will decrease, the traffic. So, the next CIP is a promise to actually include money for all of these additional projects, and it seems to me that we're taking care of the major projects right now, and the striping and signage for the bicycle network. More than half might be implemented by the next CIP, so it's going to be a good CIP, I hope. So with that's my report.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused. So does the Peralta, 1000 block of Peralta is eligible for attention?
The 85th percentile is 31 miles per hour, which is over our threshold of 30 miles per hour.
But there's no money to do anything right now, or?
To build anything right now. So there's going to be a design, hopefully a design by Fair & Pierce. This particular design of the intersection with Posen is not included in scope of work. If we want them to design, to engineer the intersection, it would have to be an extension or an amendment to the contract.
Right, but then there's other things that could be done in that.
Yeah.
And how do we get to that step?
Okay, with this ATP striping and signage project, we're going to put a bicycle lane on the uphill direction and sharrows on the downhill direction. So that actually will narrow the
Traffic lanes.
Right.
Sorry, I'm falling asleep.
I know.
The traffic lanes, and will hopefully reduce the speed. I mean, it's proven that the narrower lanes reduce speed.
But that isn't really going to happen in the foreseeable future either, right? I mean, we still have to
Yes,
go through.
we do have money. It's on the CIP to implement the striping and signage projects here.
And those are the first of the ATP projects.
The
to be
first of
done.
the ATP projects.
So what would be the schedule to implement any of those?
Well, if we finished the approval of the plans by the summer of 2014, then it's a matter of getting 3 quotes. And first of all, we have to know which streets are in good shape to actually do thermoplastic and get a contractor to do the thermoplastic only. Then we have to see if the other ones that are in bad shape, we can actually do water-based paint. So it's just basically temporary. But in any case, it would be, whatever we do on Peralta would actually influence the speed of the traffic there.
But Peggy, in terms of your question, so it would have to be in next fiscal year's budget allocated to do that CIP items?
No,
or
we already have
So you already
money.
have money set aside to
Uh-huh.
do these?
But what I want to clarify is that, okay, so we have all of these projects, but some of them will be implemented first, the other ones later, because of the situation of the pavement, the condition of the pavement.
Well, I understand that. I'm just, because that's in the quadrant of town that I live in, and so I see a lot of chatter on Nextdoor and some of those about people being really interested. But so it'd be interesting to be able to say to them, yes, you're on the list and your number might come up next fall, or I don't want people to have false expectations.
Right.
That,
Well,
because they met the threshold that something's
and
going to
right now,
happen soon.
without having the pavement management program, I cannot give you an exact date. And without having the 35% and the reaction of the public, we can actually say that we finished this project, all of this, the design of the ATP striping signage by the summer of 2014. And then we can start actually implementing them. With this CIP, we do have money for the projects. There is, hopefully we get the signage, the wayfinding, so we get some money for signs, but also there is some money for signs, if we can just do that. So there is, the capacity, it depends on how much, I don't know how much exactly the striping and signage will be, but there is capacity to build some of the projects, and some will have priority over others. So that's something that we have to decide here with the public and you guys. So I think it's too early in the process, but they actually, as I said, with the bicycle lane, we're narrowing the lanes there, and we're decreasing the speeds. With the intersection improvements, we can do the same thing that I'm thinking that we should do by Gateview in Washington, which is basically striping in hash markings and then pavement markers. We can do that. As John said, we can actually have some barriers that actually,
The pavement on Peralta looks pretty good, at least on Google Street View. Don't know how old it is, but it looks pretty good.
But it seems to me that Bill Cooper and Alan are talking to the neighbors, and they will be very supportive of any of these. So there's not going to be any. The only I can tell because I was there when we were actually trying to talk about the crosswalk is the resident, I don't want to say, he's the resident who lives by the intersection of Post and Peralta, who actually was concerned about losing her parking space in front of her house. And that's going to be an issue for the crosswalk. But other than that, I think the majority of the residents are govern the decision, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Okay.
So we already heard about F, and we already heard about G. And
That takes us to H, report on meetings from the ad hoc subcommittees for the updates.
I'm
to
sorry,
municipal
this
codes.
I know that you're going to. Any reports?
I don't have a report.
I don't have a report.
I don't think,
My dog ate my homework.
you what?
My dog ate my homework.
Dog, get your homework.
You don't have a dog, do you?
Yeah, my dog ate my homework.
Right, okay. Unfortunately, we have nothing to report on this, and we should move along.
And I'm gonna keep on putting it there. I'm sorry, just.
Please keep on putting it there.
Yeah, so to remind you, but, or maybe do you
Yes.
want a mid-month reminder or something like that?
That's a good idea for me.
Yeah.
If you want me to organize the meeting, maybe to start with one of subcommittee or something, maybe parking is important, so maybe we can meet together here.
Sure. You get Fareed and I'll come.
Okay. What is the other municipal, what is the other, what was the other one, you guys? So there's parking, there's.
Well, there are 5 of them.
John and I are administration.
Yeah,
We're on it, right, John?
yeah, we're on top of that.
Yeah.
That's the one the dog ate the homework on.
Well, we can start with parking. I mean, we don't have to do 5 at once, and we can start with parking. We have so many things to do about parking right now. So.
Well, and I'm wondering if the Measure D Greater Committee will kind of not supersede the parking, but kind of be a part of that, maybe?
Because the Measure D is more like how many parking units per, is that right?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's the park, all the design guidelines, parking, permit parking, and things like that. So it's a little bit kind of related, but it's different. So we can start with the parking section. So announcements and communications. Oh, we had the kickoff meeting for the Marine Curtis Safe Route School. Can you be here? Maybe not.
I thought we were on announcement and communications, not quite on future agenda items.
Okay, so, well, that's right,
Yeah,
that's right.
announcements. Did you find out the time of the Cordonices Creek public meeting?
December 12th. Thank you very much.
December
See, I
12th.
forgot.
What time?
7 p.m.?
Probably 7.
Sorry, can we elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So this is a design project to continue the Codornices path from 8th Street to 10th Street.
Okay.
And then from 10th, it will be, to San Pablo will be the Belmont Village developer who's going to continue. It's December 12th at the, it's one of the rooms at the UC Village. Do you remember the name of the room? It's one of the conference rooms there by.
It's their large community
It's
room.
a large community room.
Yeah.
Crossroads?
Crossroads, yes.
Crossroads, yeah. And by, at 7 p.m., but I confirm the time because I'm not really sure unless you remember that 7 p.m. is.
Yeah.
So.
Anybody else have any other announcements? Let's move on to future agenda.
Future agenda, for December, I didn't include it here because it was the last minute, but one thing I want to include is that I've been in conversations with Carlton since about a year ago when they approached me to actually install wayfinding on the interchange on Buchanan to actually guide pedestrians and bicyclists to the Bay Trail and Bay Trail and surrounding areas. I mentioned to Carlton's, to staff person, that we were working on a wayfinding system plan, and that we would like to have the wayfinding signage included in this in the plan. This plan is funded by the I-80 ICM corridor study, and at the time it was everything kind of like a blurred, and I asked him if we could actually get the funds and implement ourselves, or if we can basically implement our signs with the funds, and they can actually order the signs and everything, because nothing was actually concretized at that time. He said that he was going to do some research and get back to me when we were going to approve the wayfinding. I called him and I asked if there's some developments on the wayfinding program for the ICM, and he said no. But right now he called me and said we have it ready. And I said, well, we also have our wayfinding ready, so how can we do this? No, we already have this ready. And I said, you have to put our colors and everything. I mean, the council approved this, and there was some back and forth. So that's the issue I have, and that's the issue I would like to discuss with you in December, because they do have plans, actually. They look like freeway signs, regular MTCD signs. And we have, I invited him to the meeting, and he said that these signs have been approved by the EBBCD, and East Bay Bicycle Coalition or something like that, and then that's it. And I said, well, I was not invited to the meetings. I didn't have any input. I think that's a flawed process. So that's basically what I said. So I'm a little bit upset, but I just want to, I'm venting a little bit, and I know I'm on air, but.
We like venting.
I mean, it took so long to approve the wayfinding, and now that we have the opportunity to have the first signs, we can't. So that's the just give you heads up. This is what we're going to discuss in one of the items in December. Next, Keynes and Adams Bicycle Boulevard concept, early in 2014. Maybe on my holiday vacation, I have some time to play with the Adobe Illustrator in the signage system, because really it's lack of time that I don't have time to actually.
Don't do it over the holiday. You rest.
But playing with Adobe Illustrator is really cool, actually. It helped me a little bit here. It's just like, it's a nice program. Sometimes a headache, but. Yeah, so we can actually, at least one, Keynes or Adams. I'm going to choose one. Flip the coin.
Great. So our next meeting is December 17th, and we're planning on having a light holiday treats.
Heavy? No, light.
Possibly heavy, but light. So it's a potluck.
Great.
Feel free to bring something that you'd like to share. Do you think you're going to make that meeting, John?
I am in town.
Great.
Amazingly, I'm in town.
All right. With that, I'd like to end the meeting. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
We apparently still don't have power.